this meeting. First off, thank you for showing up. This is going to be a great meeting. This great building. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for the nice building, coastal building that we have here close to home. We're excited about continuing these meetings and making funny stuff happen. So thanks for showing up. First off, let's start off with a pledge, but let's say a prayer first. And Angela, you can lead us in a prayer, right?
Heavenly Father, we come together today from many different paths, experiences, and perspectives, yet we gather in a shared purpose, to seek what is good for our communities, our coast, and our nation. Grant us wisdom as we speak and as we listen. Help us to hear one another with patience, humility, and respect. When opinions differ, guide us towards understanding rather than division. Bless the work of these hands and minds gathered here. May our conversations lead to solutions that protect and strengthen coastal Louisiana, care for the people who depend on it, and steward the gifts of this land and water for future generations. Give us courage to do what is right, clarity to see what is needed, and unity of spirit as we work together for the common good. May our efforts today reflect cooperation, integrity, and hope for the future of our nation.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start off with this. First off, we recognize everyone. We have, of course, our governor, Jeff Landry, Dr. Clement, Representative Brian Cottonwood, Representative Joe Armstrong, Chris Callaway, Greater Lafourche Fort Commission, Colonel Scotty Otan, and John Lawson, Fort Commission. And if I miss anybody, I apologize, and we'll get you next time. And with that, I'm going to we got the big guy here today, and we're gonna get started with that. I'd like to turn the mic over to our great, aggressive governor of the great state of Louisiana, Jeff Landry.
Thank you, Tony. I don't know if I'm quite as aggressive as you are, but I do appreciate that. It's always great to be in Lafourche Parish. It's always great to be on the coast. It's always wonderful to be outside of Baton Rouge as well. Next week, both me and my good friend, Representative Ogeron, will be stuck in Baton Rouge for about 3 months, getting to know each other again real well as the legislature convenes. But today, and of course, Joe did tell me that he thinks this may be the first time that a governor has actually attended the Governor's Advisory Council. So hopefully we'll have to make this more of a regular occurrence. But today, I'm excited to share some news of a landmark achievement for the people of Louisiana. One that strengthens our coast, protects our communities, and finally clears a path after years of stalled progress. First, I would like to thank my good friend, Chairman Gordy Dove, and Michael Hare, and this council, and all who are working at CIPRA for the incredible work that you all are doing. They tell me that we have, because we're breaking a lot of records in Louisiana, if you have noticed, good records, and they tell me that we have more projects under concept engineering and construction that along the coast than at any other time in the state's history. And so that, I believe, is a promise that was made to the people of this state and a promise that we are keeping. We are advancing major land bridge designs. We're affirming something that I've always believed in, and that is that coastal restoration and hurricane protection are not separate missions. They are one and the same. I also want to begin by recognizing the tremendous partnership of the United States Army Corps of Engineers, Colonel Otan, and the entire New Orleans office. I had the pleasure of spending the day with the Secretary of the Army who visited Louisiana with Lieutenant General Graham, which is Colonel Otan's big boss, as they would say. And it was heartwarming to hear Colonel Otan tell General Graham that this was the first duty he has been in throughout his career where people knew how to pronounce his last name. But I think that also speaks volumes for the commitment that President Trump has made to the state of Louisiana. He has been great to us. I think that this state will break a record on a number of cabinet level secretaries that have visited the state, and they're not just coming here to visit, we put them to work. With their commitment, Colonel Otan and the New Orleans office's commitment to break down the barriers of bureaucracy are refreshing. And their commitment to the work that we're doing on this coast is absolutely indispensable. And I will tell you, for the first time in a long time, the Corps of Engineers is becoming a partner with the state of Louisiana rather than an obstacle. And I think that is refreshing for those that work in that New Orleans office as well. But the heart of today's announcement is a deal that many thought could never be reached. Just like they said, we could never resolve the legacy litigation that had been plaguing this state. Last year, we did that. Today, I'm proud to report that the state of Louisiana and ConocoPhillips, the largest private wetlands owner in our state, are words away from resolving the long-standing coastal litigation claims that were against them. I want to recognize the great work that the Attorney General, Liz Muro, has put into this. She has been a true partner in helping us resolve these issues. This resolution will unlock hundreds of millions of dollars in coastal investment. It will put people to work. It will allow us to accelerate projects on our coastal community that our coastal communities have been waiting for far too long. This agreement will give the state access to 150,000 strategic acres that are currently held by Conoco's subsidiary, Louisiana Land and Exploration. In addition, Conoco will be contributing to the Coastal Trust Fund to support critical restoration work. Look, for years, coastal litigation has held up progress on our coast that our coast desperately needs. One of my top priorities as governor has been to bring everyone to the table to get these deals done. Deals that move our state and our coast and our energy industry forward together. And I'm telling you, it's working. Just 2 days ago, I think it was 2 days ago, right? When did I go to that meeting?
Yesterday.
I had to check with, this is my fact checker over there. Look, 2 days ago, I went and stood on a drilling rig where an investment group led by a young lady shattered the Louisiana's record for the deepest well drilled in this state. And she hit pay that South Louisiana's drilling activity was dead. We made history just 2 days ago. That tells you that the work that we're doing over the last 2 years is paying off. This resolution that we've reached with Conoco is not the first. We've already reached resolutions with Shell and with Apache, and we're literally putting the final touches to deal with Hilcorp. Let me be clear. Conoco knows this land, and they have been great stewards. Houma has been a home base for LL&E for nearly a century, and they've been investing in these wetlands for generations. This agreement strengthens that partnership and allows us to shift from litigation to cooperation, delivering real, on-the-ground outcomes for the people who live along this coast. What does this mean for Louisiana? It means access to these lands clears the way for major restoration efforts and helps secure nearly $480 million of federal funding. And once all of our 12 coastal parishes sign, and they're gonna sign, Joe, don't worry. He was worried about that, don't you worry. We will finally break ground on long-awaited projects, including the 94-mile coastal land bridge from Plaquemines to Terrebonne, a massive storm surge barrier that will protect Houma, Thibodeau, and the communities all along the Bayou region. It's a $2 billion project with funding ready to go as soon as the final engineering and permitting is complete. Old Town City's gonna take care of the permitting for us. The expansion of Port Fourchon, a vital hub for America's energy section and a central asset in our nation's energy dominance, will also appreciate and be able to move projects forward with this settlement. We've also expanded access to nearly 50 coast-wide reference monitoring system sites across 5 parishes, data that strengthens our coastal master plan and shapes coastal knowledge worldwide. 4, the Terrebonne Basin Ridge and Marsh Creation Project, supporting the Lower Maganza to the Gulf levee system. But more than restoration, these investments is an investment in protecting lives, in rebuilding livelihoods, in preserving our culture, in ensuring that Louisiana continues to lead in energy resilience. The path forward is simple. Now, I have done my part, and I have brought the parties together. I have negotiated this deal with the help of others, and I have put my signature on it. We now need the leadership of our 12 coastal parishes to finish the job, and I'm sure that they're listening and they're paying attention to these cameras, and they'll figure out a way to get that done as well. But the funding is there, and the projects are shovel-ready. The jobs are real. The only thing standing between our communities and the protection they deserve is these final signatures. This agreement sets a new model. I cannot thank Conoco enough. It sets a new model for resolving these disputes, not through years of costly litigation, where only people winning and the lawyers on both sides, but through leadership and partnership. And that's what we've done with this resolution. This deal paves the way for more resolutions that will benefit our state and our parishes, and I'm committed to delivering on them. Again, I want to thank this council, I want to thank CIPRA, I want to thank the Corps, I especially want to thank Conoco for their patience and the long hours that we spent together hammering this out. And I want to let the people of South Louisiana know that these are the deals that actually protect our coast. They're not just words, they're actually actions. It's strengthening our economy, it's securing a safer and stronger Louisiana, so that generations of Louisianians don't move out of this state. We're finally starting to see them stay in this state and come back to this state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
And I would be remiss if I did not recognize the real boss, Sharon. Thank you. Take care of the government and helping them out. Appreciate it. And Gordon, I didn't even recognize Gordon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
for all you do. All right, let's see. Moving on, roll call. We're moving to roll call. England? Oh, Dr. Clune, I'm sorry. All right. Dr. Clune.
Thank you, Tony. I should say, Chairman Alford. Tony and I go back to 8th grade together, and I'm so proud of what he's accomplished. On behalf of Nichols State University, my wife Allison Clune, Executive Director of this Coastal Center, Lacey Mawson, and the entire Nichols family, I'm honored to welcome Governor Landry and the Governor's Advisory Commission on Coastal Protection, Restoration, and Conservation to the Coastal Center. The Coastal Center, to be completed in summer 2026, will comprise almost 40,000 square feet of state-of-the-art research labs, offices, exhibit space, and a conference center. When finished, it will serve as home for the Governor's Advisory Commission and host Chair Gordon Dove and a large contingent of CPRA professionals, as well as the Barataria National Estuary Program, Restore Retreat, and other state and federal agencies. It will be a hub like no other, a place where governmental agencies, non-governmental agencies, scientists, and industry partners work together to solve Louisiana's coastal challenges. So along with that, I want to give a special welcome to Seafaring Chairman Gordon Dove, who's worked so hard on this coastal center. Colonel of the Army Corps of Engineers, Scotty Otan, thank you, who's been a great partner from the start. My friend, Chair Tony Alford, as well as Representative Ogeron and Representative Fonlu, who have worked so hard for Nichols State University and the people of our region, and who I think is your best regional director and special assistant, Doug Sherman. I'm a little biased, but he does a wonderful job. So I want to once again welcome Governor Landry today and invite you back for the grand opening of this building, the nursing building being built right across the street, and the Louisiana Maritime Academy, which at Nichols. The reason the Louisiana Maritime Academy is here is because of the commitment of Governor Jeff Landry, and I'm so appreciative for you entrusting us with that such an important endeavor. So thank you, Governor Landry, and welcome to Nichols State University.
Thank you. Roll call. Eager? I'm on. I'm on. Let's put her next to her.
Chairman Alford.
Here.
Mr. Allen.
Here.
Ms. Almanser. Captain Bach.
Here.
Representative Gloria. Mr. Broom.
Present.
Mr. Kaplinger. Mr. Karuba. Mr. Chasom. Mr. Cochran.
Here.
Senator Connick. Ms. Jubanen. Here. Ms. Dewey. Here. Ms. Berry. Senator Betsy. Ms. Botro. Here. Representative Diamond. Mr. Hall. Mr. Minskins. Ms. Hidalgo. Here. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Macaluso.
Here.
Ms. Veloz. Here. Mr. O'Neill.
Present.
Representative Orgeron.
Here.
Ms. Trail. Here. Ms. Tuck.
Here. Thank you. And I'd also like to thank Lacey Lawson, Inger, Debbie. Thank you all so much for getting us all set up and organized. Appreciate all of you.
Just go.
All right. Approval of minutes. Excuse me, approval of agenda. Have a motion? Have a second? Discussion? Any objection? Moving on. Approval of minutes. Have a motion? Have a motion here, a second? Discussion? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to raise a question as I look at the minutes. They seem very shocking. And I looked through there and noticed that there was literally no, according to the minutes, there were no questions from the advisory committee. No discussions. It was just pretty much straightforward what the presentation was. I'm just wondering if we can't do that more completely on other boards where record standpoint, we get in trouble, and that's not actually reflecting what occurred. So I'm just wondering, given that this is an advisory committee, working on the assumption that, the members, their questions can be reported, if we can find a way to make sure that that's reflected in the minutes as opposed to just the functioning expanded agenda, which they seem to do, so.
Sure.
That's just one great thing.
Take that on anybody. Thank you, sir.
One suggestion, it seems that we do have, according to what we sent out, we do have in fact a video of these meetings and that sort of thing, which is great. They're hard to access for most people, so maybe with AI, we could just capture that, turn that into minutes as opposed to.
Thank you. All right. Any more discussion? Any objection? All right, motion carries. Old business? Anybody, any old business? Seeing none? Moving on. All right, Colonel Otek, is going to discuss our partnership with the Corps, changes, and for the better, of course. Thank you.
Governor Landry, Chairman Dove, Chairman Albert. So thank you so much for having me. It really is an honor to be here. President Clune, it's always unbelievably awesome to come back to the state. My father and because of the grads of this great institution. So it's an honor to sit here in this Coastal Center and talk to you about the great relationship we have, Corps of Engineers with the state, with our non-fed sponsors all the way down to the parishes, CPRA, and even the DOTD. I wanted to talk about two topics this morning, just in alignment with some of the broader things that are going on with the Corps. For the coalition they may not know, so Secretary Tell, Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, released his Build Infrastructure Paperwork Strategic Initiative, and really a great way to align priorities all the way down from the district level all the way up through his office and on to DC. So we're excited to implement these initiatives. We're still rolling those out through implementation guidance, which you might have seen some of those memorandums. If you haven't had a chance to read those, we can pass those forward. And always looking for ways to better align our level all the way up to the DC level. And how do we deliver this critical infrastructure down here? Two topics I wanted to talk about were supporting of that, but I think it's a topic that doesn't get talked very much. You get a lot of attention on it, but I don't spend a lot of direct time on it. So I want to talk about our regulatory program. And so as the commission just heard, Governor Landry's a busy guy, Senator Kennedy, Senator Cassidy, all of our Congress members are busy. When they call me, they don't call to see how Barbara and the kids are doing. They typically call in about permits, right? And that's kind of the thing. That's the term that gets like, hey, Colonel, what's up with this permit? What's up with that permit? And I just wanted to highlight what our 2025 regulatory team did, right? And I think it's important to understand the size and scope of this program that we're doing, right? So by law, we have a statutory requirement to ensure that any changes that have to do with waters of the U.S. comply with both our NEPA as well as our Clean Water Act, right? And so they have the task of understanding what wants to get done, right? And so someone wants to make a modification either to a waterway or something along those lines that could have an impact on it, either from a flowage point, which we would bring to our civil engineering department, or just ensure that we maintain our clean water and our environmental protection. Our intent is to go as fast as possible through that process, right? We are stewards of that process. So I want to start out by saying a lot of people think, the Corps is the Corps is a roadblock. And I want to change that narrative, right? I am a champion of this process. And so if you come as an applicant and want to start a permit, I'm rooting for you. I want you to get through that process. I'm in your court. I'm either for or against the project, but I'm rooting for you as an applicant. And my job is with our team to showcase the things you have to do to get that permit through the process. And so the team is outlining those as they go along that process. They outline these things in accordance with the law, either it's mitigation or modification to the permit of what it would take to be successful. Right? And I try to frame it that way. And so it is a partnership from the start on the application process. I partner with that applicant at multiple levels to move as fast as we can do that. And that comes down to communication alignment, it comes down to prioritization, right? There's a lot to be done. And then it also comes down to just synchronization of priorities and objectives of what we need to do. And so I've found that a lot of times just open, fair communication about both the process and what needs to be done helps that applicant align that. This has everything to do from an individual person that wants to install a dock or remove a sunken vessel, all the way up to large-scale infrastructure of our LNG plants and some of our major big deepening projects that our ports do. And so the stats there really highlight what our team is doing in 2025. We issued almost 1,800 permits. Think about that. How many permits per day that the team issues every single day? They are driven to get this process done. To put that in percentage terms of what we fully see, that's roughly about 98% of the permits get to a yes. The other roughly 2%, either it's just more, it takes some more time, or the applicant pulls it, right? Because either if they realize that it's not quite what they need to do, or there's another way that they can do that. So 98% roughly permits get approved. I think that's pretty telling that we are trying to get to yes with the teams that submit those permits. And so that top line there of 1,800 permits, that's what we're funded to do. That's what the Corps has said, your job is to issue permits. The things below that is what we do in addition to what our funding allows. And so that's another thing to keep in mind, is that we are a blanket funds, right? We're not project funded for our regulatory team. We issued just shy of 350 jurisdictional determinations, is this in the water of the U.S. or not, right? And sometimes a lot of people just want to understand, are they under, do they need a permit? Right? Do they go forward with that? We've sent out almost 200 no permit required, right? So they came into it thinking they needed a permit, and they realized they didn't, based on either where they wanted to do something or what they wanted to do. We still do reply to FOIA requests. We follow our process, right? And there's a reason why we follow our process. I am not out to litigate proof anything. My job is to follow the law. And so I stand by that. And our FOIA requests are asking to show our homework. And that's effectively how I view that. Show your work that you did that. So we respond that way. The 273 enforcement actions. So enforcement is at my discretion. I lay that out. Again, it's how we do our funding. That is a discretionary action that I have. I typically look through enforcement actions. And I want to be careful what enforcement actions mean. So words means things. And so it's the ability to convey with that permit holder and saying, you are not doing this in accordance with your permit. We need you to get back in line with that permit. As it relates to our statutory missions that we have to do at the district, navigation, flood risk management, ecosystem restoration, and preservation. Those are the three primary missions I have in the district. My enforcement actions align with those three. So if you were putting my statutory mission at odds, that's when we really engage with that permit holder and go after more of an enforcement to say, look, you are having a detrimental effect broader than yourself by what you're doing outside of your permitted action. I want to highlight that all of this has been done with a staff of just about 50 people. Right? That's big, but you can appreciate the size of the program that we have. And so 50 people to undertake this amount of work is quite impressive. They're very passionate about what they do. They work very hard. And they work to accomplish that in time. We also have a roving account of permits that are still, it's typically a first in, first out, but there also are permit priorities that we place. We go to the Louisiana Economic Development, we synchronize with them, so they have their top 25 in the state. We try to align our priorities with the Louisiana to ensure that our permitting priority of effort is in alignment there as well. We also look at our prioritized projects, and so if it's a priority for me, all the way up to Assistant Secretary of the Army, for example, Morgan's to the Gulf, if we happen to require a permit, that will become priority action as well. Here's some best practices for your, as you interface with either private industry or agencies that require a permit from us. We always encourage pre-application meeting. please come to us beforehand, talk with us, sit down with us, so that we can walk through what you want to do versus what you want to accomplish, and so that we can best scope, how your application looks. Always encourage pre-application meeting. I encourage the use of general permits and national general permits where it makes sense. And so sometimes just the modification, thinking it's an individual, we try to discourage the use of individual permits because it takes longer to go forward from there. Of course, a complete application is but that pre-application meeting, that consultation helps with that, right? And so it is a discussion and dialogue on what it takes to get there. Responsiveness and clear communication. So I'll go back to my very, very first point. I am a champion of the process, and I'm rooting for you. And so if we say we need something, it's because we need it in accordance with the process and the law. It's not trying to present a roadblock. It's not trying to present you with a dilemma that's unsolvable. It's because we needed to do what we need to do, right? So we always encourage our applicants to be good partners, right? And I understand we're going to ask you to spend money sometimes on whatever they need to do or take actions. We know that, but it's about being a complete and fully comprehensive application as it applies to our process. Lastly, realistic expectations. And so these things do take time. We have to consult with a lot of agencies. We have to consult with a lot of people to do our work, to make sure that we're doing good work as it relates to following the law. It's not just a checklist of going down and consulting the law. We have to get out and go see the area. We have to talk with the individuals in that area. So it's comprehensive. It's immensive. And we have to understand that we're doing it. It is not chasing paperwork just to chase paperwork, right? I want to be very clear about that. It is about adhering to the statutes of the law as it relates, but doing that as quickly as possible. And so I think those engagements help with that realistic expectation. Going forward for that. I'll pause here for the commission if there's any questions, and we'll move on to the next program that I wanted to talk about. I'll just wait for the calls. Which is good. Welcome them, please. Feel free always to call back. All right. The next one I want to talk about was our QIPR program. And I get really excited about this, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity that I think our agencies understand, but not a lot of outside the agency has an awareness of what it is and what opportunities it presents. Some of you who've been around Louisiana for a while may know it as its original name, known as the BRO Act, right? And so Congressman Breaux, Senator Breaux, Honorable Breaux, all the above, introduced legislation that became known as the Coastal Wetland Planning, Protection, and Restoration Act. Right? And it's really a multi-task force of several federal agencies that come together and discuss how to build wetlands for South Louisiana. It is a tax off of, it's a gasoline tax that comes off of recreation and fishing vessels. It funds the program. And we work together in alignment with CPRA towards the Coastal Master Plan to really make sure that we are building projects that are in alignment with where the state wants to go. And I think that's critical there. It's a great federal-state alignment. It's an open task force. I run the task force, but it is an open discussion and dialogue. And anyone from the state, any single individual, any person can submit a project for review. It is access across. There is no barrier to submit a project. And we find that the projects are getting better, they're getting more mature. Sometimes those individuals need help to make it more mature. You have a great idea, but they might not have the access to the engineering or the design or even the modeling that you really need. But we're seeing those barriers decrease. And I think it's a great way to engage the citizens all the way up to the federal government about coastal protection. Since its inception in 1990, we've seen about total $2.6 billion. You see that as a cost share between the federal and the state. And I'm really excited to showcase there are roughly 90,000 acres of wetlands produced in that time. Approaching the 100,000 acre milestone. I think it's a great celebratory milestone as we come into there. It's in coordination with other agencies as we hand off some of those projects, we execute those projects. I say there's an opportunity to do better, to do more. And we'll highlight that a little bit. I just may have a hard time seeing that, but I just wanted to show you where some of those projects exist across South Louisiana. Again, it is within the coastal zone, and so we're looking into those projects there as what we execute. But you see a bulk of that with Barataria and Terrebonne, and then moving across the state. Some of that has to do with actual the landscape that we're dealing with, just in this area. Some of that has to do with the projects that we see as our what we're finding is our western parishes, as they become more attuned to it and understanding the projects in the middle, we've seen an increase in the number that have made it through the task force and getting funded. And then we've seen across the board, we have great projects, but we have a cut line, right? We have to make a decision at some point. So we're trying to balance that across the state as well as what we're trying to do. And so that's grown in maturity, but gives you just a visual representation of how much the funding and time, and hopefully as we continue this program, we'll start to see that grow and normalize as well. So we just completed our PPL 35, right? Project priority list. You got to have a good acronym if you're in the government. I learned that over my career, and so this one we just voted on this here recently, and the task force reviewed all of our project lists, and these were the ones that we are pushing forward, recommending application funding and trying to move towards construction. The federal agency will basically champion those projects and move those through, but this is the one that came out of the most recent. Won't go through each one of those, but just gives you a snapshot of what the last task force voted for and the type of projects that we're seeing come across this there. All right, really kind of what I wanted to get to is the opportunities for Quipper growth. So the biggest thing I can highlight and just highlight it as a point for the commission and for the other agencies. And so I talked about appropriation and funding, right? Authorization, appropriation. And I know a lot of the room understand it. I always use this example when I tell this is there's a difference between authorization and appropriation. We need two things to really move forward. We need the authority to do it, and we need the money to do it. And so we can't have the authority all day long, but if it's not funded, then we can't do it. It's kind of the way I do it is that my son will come up to me and say, "Hey, Dad, can I go to the movies with my friends?" Yeah, absolutely. He has my authority, right? What's the next thing he's going to ask me for? Hey, can I have $20, right? So I can give him authority all day long, but if you're not having the money, he's not going to go. So that's kind of looking forward. And what I want to highlight is that this fund has been great, and the fund cycle is a cycle, right? And so that cycle is going to end at the end of FY26. And so we're entering a cycle ending for FY26. It's important to highlight as we work with the state on looking forward for FY27 and beyond, highlighting that for the national interest. The other thing that I'm really excited about, I've sat down personally multiple times with Director Hare and Chairman Dutt to go over the state master plan. Really, really impressive the maturity of the state master plan and how that's grown, and us staying in very close alignment with that. I'll tell you at kind of the executive level, there's no daylight between us, right? We are working with them to ensure that the priorities of the state master plan stay in alignment with where our priorities at the state level. It's also given us opportunity to do gap analysis, right? So the state can only be so many places, so where they can't be, we can look for opportunities as well. But Quipper is fundamentally, by the authorization, directed to go towards the state master plan, right? And so as that continues to mature, Quipper will better support that opportunity as well. We're looking for continued growth of the program. I think, I don't mean this flippantly, Quipper is just big enough where it's hard to grow, right? So it's just big enough. I would like the opportunity to see that grow. I would like to work with the state. If we could see some growth of that, then we could really probably exponentially grow how much we can do, right? So it's just big enough to be a little too small in a way. And then I highlighted the glide path there. Always a great reason to celebrate the success of a program, to highlight what it is. And also love to see our growth with our academic partners. We work with LSU, ULL, and so really excited to see the growth of another coastal center here. President Clune, thank you for your team, to see what the board is doing with that, with the commission, with CPRA. So always a wonderful opportunity to serve academics, to serve as a bridge between that individual person that we talked about that has an idea it needs it to grow and mature all the way up to project submission so that it's best posture to get through our PDL and get approved. So wonderful opportunities going forward there. That's all I have, team. I really do appreciate it. You know, I'll close here and say, like, everything we do is a team sport. That's an Army motto. The Army's a team sport. Right? There's no I. We do this together. And I'm excited. You know, a lot of what we do is based on relationships. And so I want to thank Chairman Albert, thank all of you for the opportunity and the appreciation of maintaining those relationships. I'm a recipient of my predecessors' work and the work they've done in building those relationships. And so I intend to maintain those and grow them where we can. So thank you very much for all you do. Thank you. That's all I have. I'll pause for any questions.
Colonel, thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I want to commend your staff in the New Orleans District for working with a number of the nonprofit organizations and especially some of the landowners in the Atchafalaya Basin and a lot of the concerned recreational fishermen, commercial fishermen, et cetera, on the lower Mississippi River Comprehensive Management Study. I know that the funding for that study was cut pretty abruptly earlier this year, but it has been reinstated to a certain extent. I think there was $5 million.
That's correct. Yeah, we received $5 million in this recent.
Yeah, and your staff was wonderful to work with. They were very receptive to ideas about water management in terms of, especially my concern here about fish and ducks and things like that, and that's something to be concerned about. I want to know, with the pause in that study, how long is it going to take you guys to get staff back up and start working on it again? And number two, when can we start engaging with you again about some of the perhaps tweaks that could be made in the Mississippi River system to better benefit habitat, fisheries, water quality, et cetera? Because we don't want to see this take a step back. Like, there's real momentum has been built up. I'd like to see that move forward as fast as possible.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I want to commend the stakeholders and the team there as well. And I came in on the end of that. While we didn't receive funding appropriation in FY25, I really, I want to credit the team. They hit a really good stopping point. Sometimes it's hard when you have to stop something mid-stride, right? So the idea of just picking it right back up is never really true. But that team really did hit at the ends of some major milestones, which now we can look at more of an implementation style. We still have some work we have to do, but they briefed me on it. It cleanly stopped. When we get our $5 million in, we are appropriated, but as that comes in, we'll stand that team back up in accordance with Mississippi Valley Division, our headquarters. To your specific question, I think now, have us come talk to them now, right? And let us engage now. I've committed to the Atchafalaya Basin that I want to build that team. I understand there's a lot of diverging stakeholder interest, and I can respect that and understand that. And so I'm okay serving kind of as the center of that to consolidate those concerns and try to weigh them. I think if you were to just ask me to do it on my own, I have to almost lead that conversation with a flood risk management style, right? And I know there's more to it than that. But my current authorization is flood risk management first, navigation second, ecosystem third. And that's not fair ranking for all those stakeholders. And so I come in with an awareness of that. And I think Elmore Comp is meant to address that, really. It really was, when we first look at it 100 years ago now, we're almost about to celebrate 100-year anniversary of the 27th flood, 28 Flood Control Act that drove a lot of that. Every 100 years, I think the court says, hey, we need to relook at this. Can we do this better, right? We made some decisions 70 years ago and conditions have changed. So we meet regularly with the Atchafalaya, both governmental and non-governmental agencies. My ask is I've been meeting with them one-on-one. I'd like to start bringing that a little more collectively together. The biggest thing that I say is look, you got to really come clear and concise with what you want, right? As I love bumper sticker slogans, but as much as we want to make the Atchafalaya great again, that's not a helpful goal, right? And I want you to be very clear in understanding. And I think when we start there and we gain all the appreciation of all the stakeholders' true instincts, then we can start to bridge that and find where there's some synergy and some synchronization.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I know it's difficult to ask them. I think everybody who's been in the middle of the conversation about, water quality issues, sedimentation, and all those things understands that we're never gonna go back to a time when that area isn't going to be managed as a floodplain, first and foremost. How do we manipulate the way the water moves in certain areas? How do we remove sediment and make strategic cuts and things like that to improve the habitat while working within the framework of it being still a floodplain? So, I'll talk to you, or if nothing else, we sit down and ask.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Allen.
Yes, John, thank you. I wanted to also commend you and give you kudos for having the courage to come out of the chute and start talking about regulatory permitting. One thing that's given your district a black eye is that. We were all, I say we, those of us in this room were involved in private practice, coastal restoration, levee building. There's a lot of folks in this room who submit permit applications. We were all relieved when we read that Adam Telly, the Assistant Secretary of the Army, came out with this building infrastructure, not pavement, bumper sticker, right? Bumper sticker in DC. Yeah, it takes a while for that to roll out. You mentioned you were waiting on implementation guidance, which is core speak for fill in blanks, what exactly does that bumper sticker mean? Then when it gets to you, you also apart from the process. And all you dang engineers are the same. Every one of them, I worked with a lot of them, got the process. And that's the way you get to a process, to a problem. And so, I get it. It takes time to modify the process. At the end of that whole exercise, then you got staff that has to implement 50 people working diligently under your direction and control. There's been observations of those in this room who think that staff may not be quite as motivated as you think they are. So my request to you is, when that guidance comes down, and when you work on your process on this regulatory permitting, and you get with your staff, let's truly make this less paperwork, more beneficial to the applicants here in South Louisiana, because time is not on our side, and your agency takes a while to get things done. I get it, that's the process. My request to you is speed that up as much as you can, and I know being from Houma and an O10, you got great work ethic to start with, and you're gonna make sure that.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I did want to take a moment. So, Mr. Sean in here, I'm gonna put on the spot. Just hired as our new regulatory chief, and you must have had a microphone in the office when I was telling him what I wanted him to do.
Lord, I'd like to have
Right. So your comments there. Now, I'm not going to, but what you just said. I got to be careful, and I tell this to my team all the time. There's a law, right? There's regulation, and then there's opinion. All right, thank you for your opinion. Get out of here. I don't have time for your opinion to slow down. Like, that's a lot of paperwork I can get rid of on opinion. Thanks for your opinion. Appreciate it. I'll take it into consideration. There's policy, right? So then my job is to find out where that policy is. That my policy? Is that my headquarters? Is that core? Is that Mr. Tell, ASA? Okay, then let's go address that. Right? Every policy has an exception. So I'll work diligently on that. I owe that vertically on. There's law. All right. So I can push as hard as I want up the chain. Sometimes the external has a little bit more influence on the law, right? So I spend a lot of time differentiating between those three, right? And so process is the ability to work through that. Now I agree what I just said in your mind, you're like, my God, that takes forever. So we try to streamline that as much as we can. I value partnerships. I value them. Because then we can come together. Mr. Alfred has called me numerous times, Colonel, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why can't we just do X, right? Is that fair? And I go, Tony, that's a good point. Why can't we? Let's figure it out, right? There's times where he calls me and Angela and Mitch go, Tony, that's the law. Okay, well, hey, if you guys want to change it, you carry that, right? So I'm with you, Mr. Allen. I completely agree, right? There are things that I look at on a daily basis. I talk to Mr. Elsie, why in the world do we have to file? We say yes. Why don't I have to file a volume this, XYZ just because we agree? right? So there's ways we're gonna get faster. I view implementation guidance as operating space, right? And so the time it takes to get from DC to me, that's operating space. If I get my hand slapped, okay, I know I'm with the left or right end of this. So I'm free to operate during implementation guidance time frame. I don't pull back from that. I move forward into that. Okay, so that's just, you know, it's not to push back on you, it's just to kind of how I think, and how I go through that process.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. Welcome back to South Louisiana. And, thank you for coming to our meeting. And, Duane, thanks for having me. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I guess two things, number one. She using the microphone. It's tough to maybe get some of these policies, some of the appropriate regulations. So I choose to tell staff. Visit with you about overall signs, recommendations or participation. The second question I have for you, and I know you have close communications, but I'm just curious about when there are implementation changes to the state and how your team deals with that, like if you're seeing some things out of the but how do you catch up with things that have been on the books, and now and for going in different heads and state? How do you absorb that? How do you know what's going on with y'all and that kind of how do you handle that?
So for your first question there, and prioritization and going forward for that. So we build our list of priority projects and study site design, right? So we just submitted it up to division consolidates those across the entire valley. They produce their list of priority projects at the DC synthesizes that across the United States. So at Echelon, they're looking at what's a priority both locally, regionally, and nationally. And so, you know, I think it's very telling if I have a project that hits nationally, that's telling to me, right? It says, okay, I got vertical alignment there. I have submitted Elmore Comp as a priority project up to division, right? So which includes the Chapel Basin Management. And I can't speak for what General Peoples will do, but just her interest in it, you know, I would not be surprised if that hits her priority list as well. And so at a minimum, we see definitely alignment through the valley on the importance of Elmore Comp and Chapel. I wholeheartedly appreciate your comments on lead with the engineering, lead with the science. I think there's some really, really good, passionate government and NGOs that we work closely with, and we're trying to encourage them to lead more. You know, I love their feelings, and I value their heart, but you gotta lead with the science, right? As you want to really institute changes. And so it's some of that's teaching some of those NGOs to chase. I can't do much with, I've lived here every day, just trust me, right? And that's hard, because I do trust them, but they have to show the data. To your second point, question there, you know, I will tell you that it's probably multifaceted. We work with CPRA at some echelon daily. We have data, someone in my organization is engaging with CPRA at a daily basis. I directly engage with Director Hare or Chairman Dove at least once a week, just to check in, and then broader. As they hit those milestone events on, particularly their state master plan that they present both to the board and then up to the state. So we have engagements with them prior. As we move into the WRDA authorization or any of those congressional national authorizations, we synchronize with them on that as it relates to our priority list. So there are projects that the state will pursue in their master plan that are state projects, and that's their authority. They can do what we want. Our connection to that is typically a permit, as I believe, right? And so if they want to make a change, it's a permitted action. They're free to do as they wish. So if they want to turn that on, turn that off, modify, they'll come back to us. That's up to them. The stuff that we work closely with them on is just to understand where they want to maintain that state-fed interest. Right? And so if they want to pursue something as a cost share or it's part of the larger system of systems, as we talk more Nancy to the Gulf, as we talk Southwest Coastal, say Tammany, those bigger things, then we make sure we're really closely aligned with how that, within the coastal zone, how that aligns going forward. And so, state can do state things within their state laws and within the funding that they have if they want to do it. And I really kind of key in on, okay, where are we partners in this? It was where we came to that, the state has, there's opportunity to apply, and that's why I talked to the state and said, hey, let me pursue more here. Understanding just what your budget is and reach has. So that's how we work.
Thank you, and I'd also like to thank Ron for all his good support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Ron. Okay. We're on, CPRA project. Mr. Harris.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the commission and members of the public. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. I've asked Brian Lazina, our chief of planning, to join me. There's a few slides at the end that I think he will cover more succinctly than I will be able to. And I do have a lengthy presentation. I'll try to get through it quickly. I want to start, obviously, just by quickly acknowledging what the governor announced today, how important it is for us to get back to work on a lot of these key projects. LLME has been just a critical land partner with us for so long. It is great to see some momentum for us to get back to projects that we do have programmed and ready to go. Appreciate his leadership and the Attorney General's on that. And then, as the Colonel just wrapped up, and he may not be in the room when I finish, I want to say thank you to his partnership. I would hope to think that the working relationship between our two agencies has probably never been stronger than it is today. My commitment to him, to his team, is that there's really no daylight between what we're doing and what they're doing. Does not mean that we will always agree. We will work through those things together, but to have a critical partner like that, not knowing what we're doing, is to our detriment. And so I really appreciate the lines of communication. I think talking once a week was generous. I think the last 3 Saturdays we've talked. So yeah, we do not lack in communication with the Corps. I really value that, and the rest of our staff is communicating. So as we jump in, I think this obviously is my first time to present to the commission. And it may have been a little while since you've heard from CPRA, so I'll try to run through, maybe a quick look back at 2025, where we are in 2026, and where we're heading from here. Some of this may be repetitive from our December board meeting, so please indulge me for those who've seen it already. But this is really 2025 by the numbers. 12 projects in construction with about $49 million in total value, 9,000 acres of what we created, 10 million cubic yards of sediment moved, 12 projects completed, with 363 million in total value there, about 4.9 miles of levees improved. I think the real 2 key takeaways here are, what did we complete and what's really in cycle? We've completed about $400 million worth of work. We've got another $400 million that's in some stage of active engineering design or construction. Then we've got about another $400 million that's coming online. When you sort of add those up, it sort of conveniently gets us to about that $1 billion mark that we've been expressing for a number of years in our annual plan, and that's really more of an expression of our capacity. We want it to look like a burn rate to the extent that we can, but I think this really is a better snapshot of what are we really rolling off the books, what are we getting on the books, and where are we heading from here. As we move forward, again, a long list of projects, not that you can read through these. What we've been able to complete in 2025, again, about $390 million in projects. What we started in 2025, again, about 473. Just make a quick note, we'll talk about the one second to the bottom, Calcasieu being large-scale marsh creation project. I've got a slide on that a little bit later, but that's a little bit of an overweight on that project. What we really got going is a project or a contract that's around $100 million for the first phase of this, and that will put us in line for then being able to get to the second phase of the project, drawing down more of those restored buckets, $2, if I'm not mistaken, is where it came from. One of the restored buckets. But this is the biggest project on the western side of the state. Excited to see this getting into construction and then being able to truly move on to phase 2 in the very near future. So let's start kind of on that walk across the state. We're starting Southwest, Rockefeller Refuge. I think no stranger to people in this room. A lot of projects have been completed in 2020, 2021, and then we've got more going in 2025. Currently, Indian 41 is under design. I believe the Corps does have some additional funds that they're going to be contributing for our ongoing efforts there on Rockefeller. Weed Estate will be contributing as well. A lot of the lessons learned in this area and a lot of great studies, I think, out of our Lafayette office on really the value of that rock placement, the land accretion that's occurring there, and how we're able to help stabilize that shoreline. So we appreciate the continued investment in Rockefeller. You know what I just mentioned on Calcasieu Sabine, $122 million restored grant. That contract was awarded at the beginning of this year. That work will begin very soon. And this is just the first phase. This is going in to put in the water control structures that will help restore that hydrology. But there are thousands of acres and multiple polygons of marsh creation that we can do sort of in that second phase. And how quickly we can get to that is certainly what our team is urgently working toward right now. Looking forward to, again, really being able to complete what will ultimately be the largest project that we've done on the southwest side of the state. Home Elevation Program, this is a partnership we've had with the Corps of Engineers under the Southwest Coastal Study. Pilot project was begun, I believe, maybe a year and a half ago now, with the goal of elevating maybe 19 to 20 homes. We work closely with them on elevating several of them so far. A lot of lessons learned, about a lot of institutional knowledge and memory being created as Ron continues to shake his head in agreement on how much we've all learned together on this. But I think this is going to be a key inflection point for us as a state as well as the Corps, looking at what is truly of most value for a lot of our coastal communities. Elevating homes is, I think, going to become a more and more ever-present element to what we do to help protect our coast. And so how we get this right is really, really critically important for both the Corps, for CPRA, and I think for many other state agencies that will start to see the federal interest in their communities not being expressed through maybe a levy ladder, but rather through home elevation. So appreciate OCD and other state agencies have been doing this for quite a while. A number of local parish partners have been doing this, but sort of elevating that up to the level of CPRA, the state, and the Corps has brought some challenges, but I think a lot of opportunities for us to figure out how to do this together. Don't hold me to the number, but I think there's 4,000 homes in total. Is that right? Just in Southwest. So getting these 20 right, figuring out this process, what does that lead us to? And this leads us to something on a scale that's really never been done, I don't believe, anywhere else in the state of Louisiana. So appreciate the hard work and the brain damage we've done collectively on this one. White Lake, wish the governor was still here. I would have turned the mic to him very quickly. Maybe not to read his own quote, but to express his interest in this project. Certainly near and dear to his heart, and something that, as someone who lives on the southwest side of the state, I joked with Chairman Alfred and Chairman Dove earlier that I appreciate the fact that the governor and I both live on the western side of the Atchafalaya, and we want to make sure Southwest gets equal, and I mean at parity, the funding with Southeast. So not to take anything away from Southeast Louisiana, but White Lake, the work we'll be able to do there to help that facilitate that partnership with LDWF to restore the marsh here, remove some facilities that are located on their property, and stabilize the GIWW. A lot of the exciting features to this, we'll be able to move out. I think on shoreline protection in the near future, and then the larger marsh creation work that we'll do there will come in the years ahead. The total project cost of this is roughly $200 million, but looking at what are those most critical features we'll be able to do in the near term to stabilize that coast, or that shoreline, I should say, and then be able to clean up that wildlife management area so we really have sort of the best footprint to go work out there and not have to work around some oil and gas facilities. Port Wonder, I'll just briefly touch on this. As you know, we have a few things that sort of fall out of that strict protection and strict restoration bucket. So we have livable refuge, but we also have money dedicated to us to restore and to BP spill to facilitate education. I've said this in many other meetings that continue to invest in connecting the public and connecting the community with what we do is really critical, I think, to maintaining that longer term public support, not only for the challenges that are facing our coast, but also the response from the state, from our local partner vendors. So a place like Port Wonder obviously allows people to go and see and touch and feel and understand what we're doing when they may not be able to actually get out there and see it on a daily basis. So appreciate the partnership there with those in Lake Charles for helping put this together. And I believe we contributed, to just a few dollars to this project. But again, just another important component to maintaining that level of community engagement and public awareness around what we do as a state agency. Go to South Central. We talked about, trying to think if this has been brought up today or not, probably not, but looking at really the next largest levee system that we're contemplating right now. Building off of, and I'll sort of start on the right end, the thing that looks the most swiftly is, St. Mary. That's the levee system they to build. A few elements there we want to try to help close the gaps on and complete with them as we move into Iberia. That parish obviously has been moving quite far down the path to selecting that alignment. We've had a number of structures that are currently in design there to provide some immediate benefit. And then as we move over to Vermilion, it maybe looks a little less definitive, and I think those community conversations are just at the infancy there. But the whole idea is that we really can't think about St. Mary independent of Iberia, independent of Vermilion. We really need to be looking at the entire region, look at what the whole complex is going to be across that region. And then obviously, much like Northampton and Gulf, we've got to get started somewhere. This is going to take quite a long time to build, and we hope that those local governmental entities will be able to come together much in the same way that Morgan's, I think, really created that model for those communities on how to join forces, advocate within their own parish to secure funding, but then also, I would say, effectively advocate up to places like CPRA and up to the federal government to be able to secure the funding necessary to deliver that protection. So excited to work with those communities to really see a project like this come to life in the near future. Marsh Island, again, another one that's been critically important to the governor as well. Trying to get over here to my notes on it. This is, again, another partnership with LDWF looking to restore 71,000 acres of brackish and intermediate marsh. Key features here, again, will be completing about 13 miles of shoreline protection, some marsh creation, and interior lake restoration. And then Bayou Chene Floodgate, really want to highlight, this was not completed in 2025, but it was the first time that year represented when we had to fully close the structure for a high water event. That performed incredibly well. By closing that structure, it became a 1,100-foot flood wall, tying back into the levees, protecting 30,000 residents across 6 different parishes. So I remember when I worked for the congressman, it seems like a lifetime ago, when we had Bayou Chene issues and we went out there to St. Barge, and we were trying to help St. Mary find emergency funds to put temporary measures in place. And great to say that within our lifetime, we saw real solutions come into place, and then we tested it and worked. I know everyone in the room, timing and a sense of patience may be relative to each of us, but to see something like this actually be completed and work is great. Appreciate the partnership, both with St. Mary Levee District as well as our federal partners. Bayou Pigeon boat launch, I won't harp on this too much, but again, back to that concept of being able to connect the community. We cut the ribbon on this. I think this was completed last year, did a ribbon cutting in December. We were able to expand the boat launch here from 2 lanes to 7. This is one of the most heavily used boat launches that accesses the Atchafalaya Basin. It's critical not only for recreational fishermen, but for the oil and gas industry. So it really supports the entire community out there that wants to access the waterway. And I think I jokingly said a minute that the likelihood that a future congressman, a future senator, or a future governor is probably going to launch in a boat out of there and go out there and see the Chapalaina, see the beauty of what our state has and the importance of being able to restore it is priceless when we think about making those investments in the future. So we are one generation away from people truly questioning the value of coastal Louisiana. Two generations away from people saying it's not worth the sustained investment. And both launch like this and continuing to foster our culture and get people out there into our waterways and into our coastal communities, I think is invaluable. So I look forward to the dividends something like this will pay for us and the generation we're all going to be sitting at this table. Again, just run through a number of projects that we've been able to complete here. Again, this is on river reintroduction and Bayou Lafourche. This expands our Mississippi River intake to about 1,000 to 1,500 CFS. In 2025, we were able to complete the foundation walls, access the bridge underway, offer handling about 65% complete. The contract is intended to be completed late this year, around December timeframe. Total project value of around $98 million. Again, being funded through multiple lines of funding for us, Mesa, Surplus, Capital Outlay, and then Bayou Lafourche Freshwater District. I'm going to have a few other slides where I talk about partners that come together, but I really want to express to this commission and to remind the public, almost no single project do we ever build with a single source of funding, and we ever build it alone. Almost every project we have truly represents a partnership in how the funding comes together, and a partnership in how we implement it, both with our local partners and our federal partners. On the navigation canal lock system was out there last week with the Colonel doing a tour of it, and someone who is not an engineer and not a scientist, I would just say, just amazed when you go out there. It's hard to understand the scale of these things from a slide like this. So I'm not going to volunteer the work crew would love for everyone to go out there and take a tour of it. I'd probably slow them down significantly. But these are incredibly large structures. It's I think it's been called a linchpin of our entire system there. And to see something like this finally being able to go in and work in concert with all of the other protection measures that are either in place or being contemplated to be put on the ground, it is, again, a testament to the continued focus on protection, continued focus on protecting our coastal communities. Looking forward to this project being done. I think we're looking at 28. That one I'm hearing, yeah, I think in the next several years, we're gonna see this fully completed. Terrebonne HNC, Rhode Island Restoration, again, had the finalization of this in January of this year. I think we did a little bit of a ribbon cutting on it. Again, just another fantastic project, about 35 acres in total. As with any project, figuring out a way to sort of optimize our construction and figure out a way to sort of maximize the value we have. This ultimately went from 27 acres to 35 acres. It was funded through small NERDA dollars through Cinco oil spill, and then another larger chunk out of Deepwater Horizon. As a dike was completed, breakwaters were installed, and then about 80% of the land was filled. We've been able to see, I think, some revegetation out there and great habitat there for wildlife as well. And quickly going over here to Fort Fourchon-Harrison project, I'll cut to the very last line in this one because I think it's really important to highlight the partnerships we have. While this project is all about 8,700 acres of, built about 4,000 linear feet of living shoreline, I want to review the partners on this very quickly. Ducks Unlimited, CPRA, NIFWIF, ConocoPhillips, Greater Lafourche Port Commission, Chevron, Restore Retreat, Loop, NACA, Coca-Cola, Woodside, LDWF, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Oxy, NOAA. So that to me really represents what our working coast is. It represents a community coming together. Oh, did I miss Shell? Shell here? I'm sorry. You can blame the person who puts my notes together.
It's me.
So the only risk I have of reading them all out is actually missing one, and you probably have a giant logo in the middle of it. I appreciate the patience of our partners. I still think my point stands, that this really does represent a working coast coming together, putting restoration projects on. Thank you. And we'll talk about this very, very quickly, because I do want to recognize, time is limited, and we have more presentations coming to highlight this, but as the governor talked a little bit about, and Chairman Duff has talked often about, we've got the Eastern Terrebonne, we'll talk about the Barataria one very briefly as well, but projects that have been on our master plan for quite a long time. These are, describe them as kind of a highlighter view of project features that you see in the 23 master plan. We are working right now to go through the early stages of engineering design and refining the alignment of what will ultimately be a fairly lengthy land bridge across the southern part of the state. And the combination of the land bridges and the work we're doing on our barrier islands, I think, is really the governor's commitment of bringing that coastal fight as close to the coast as we possibly can, to continue to reinvest in our front lines of defense, as well as delivering on really critical marsh creation and habitat restoration projects in this area. Again, we'll let the next presentation cover this in greater detail. Organics to the Gulf, certainly no stranger to this room. Incredible opportunities with the funding we have available to us. Appreciate the federal delegation giving the Corps additional dollars there and working through what is probably one of the most complex series of construction projects we have. I don't even know how many are truly in construction with it right now on a work plan that we have together. But I may just pause very quickly and turn it to Chairman Alford if he wants to add anything on kind of the status of Organic itself and kind of where we're heading here.
Well, we're racing to 15 feet, you know, on much of it, we're moving forward. A lot of great things happen, you know. That lock system is going to be phenomenal for the entire system. As you said, the linchpin, right? Stopping the salt water from coming in, keeping fresh water in the system. So we're moving forward. Always moving forward. We're excited to have these guys working with us. And CPRA as well.
Thank you. And I'll just say we're working on something with the Corps right now. It's an existing law, and worded, it's called Section 1043B. Not that that should get anyone in this room overly excited. But it really is an existing provision in law that it gets a few of us excited. But it's an existing provision that really hasn't been used that would, I would say, help strengthen the partnership delivery of major federal systems between the Corps and the non-federal sponsor, and figuring out how do we optimize one another's true strengths? How do we figure out better ways to execute project delivery? Again, this is not done in the absence of our federal partner. This is not done, you know, where we just sort of take it and run and we sort of leave them behind. This is a federal system. 1043 is really out there designed to figure out how do you find the strengths of each of the partners that are delivering on a system, maximize those strengths, and get those features put in place. So I think to your point of racing to 15 feet, a lot of us feel very confident we've got the capability and expertise to do it. And we're working through a very formal process with the Corps and headquarters right now to figure out a way to truly paper that up and get some agreements in place. So if we can use what we think is our strength to move some dirt, and the Corps can continue to optimize their strengths on the flood control structures and things that are important for navigation. So again, 1043B has been around for quite a while, no one's used it. So a little bit of a policy geek, and some people found it. We're going to figure out a way to make these things work for us so that we can truly optimize the benefits for the local community. And Southeast Louisiana, I'm going to run quickly through these. We've got Lane Pontchartrain Shoreline Protection project here. This was a project mainly funded through Paris-led project for the Go Mesa funds that they had available to them. This area of shoreline was eroding about 10 feet a year since 1915. So being able to go back in and help stabilize that. We're anticipating the project to be completed later in the fall of 2026. Moving over to La Branch, Marsh Creation Project, again, about 13,000 feet of Lake Pontchartrain shoreline has been protected here. Project was completed in August of 2025 and delivers long-term community and ecosystem protection. And then again, another, back on home elevation with Grand Isle, parish matching plan to make, and ask Brian to kind of fill in here, but again, in Jefferson Parish, we've been working with them on their home elevation program. In that respect, we've been able to just provide, I believe it is the federal match that they need, I think, to draw these dollars down. So, yep. And so, home elevation is certainly going on in other parts of the state, and this is one where we're working directly through the parish. And then I'll just highlight, I got a chance, I always like to get my hands dirty whenever possible to get out there on Grand Isle and participate with CRCL on a planting event with them. Great, probably no better way to spend your Friday. It was out there, a beautiful day, nice breeze, got a good lunch, and had a nice drive home. So every now and then I get to go do some fun stuff. And then just kind of piggybacking off of Grand Isle here, in this picture you'll see probably the governor, you'll see the mayor, but you also see Assistant Secretary Avitel, the Deputy Assistant Lee Forstrand, other members of our core leadership. I think that's General Kelly there. If I'm not mistaken, and then probably Colonel Otan somewhere in that picture. But, you know, it is really a testament, I think, to the local community to be able to bring down this level of core leadership. I think Commissioner Tell had been formally confirmed and maybe on the job 2 weeks. Yeah, less than a week. And 9 days, that's almost counting. So 9 days out of his final confirmation in Washington, D.C., he's standing on the beach in Grand Isle. So I think we often take for granted the ability for Louisiana to swing above its weight class in Washington, D.C. That's certainly true with having the Speaker, the Majority Leader, and obviously we've had many predecessors on the U.S. Senate who've held high-ranking positions. But I would bet today that the President of the United States probably knows Grand Isle. And I would say that's probably because of Mayor Carmel. And so I just never want to take away or overlook the importance of local communities continuing to stay active, stay engaged. They need to do it with us, they need to do it at the state level, and they need to continue to do it at the federal level.
Yes, we need to make sure that he's not getting confused. There's a Grand Isle in Nebraska.
No.
Oh, yeah. So we just gotta make sure he knows his feet.
The president?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I'm pretty confident. Yeah. Appreciate the partnership, and I think the real takeaway, and I thought the Colonel might have covered this, but we pushed very hard to be able to get permits expedited, to be able to get the shoreline protection to fill in, I think it's 31 segmented breakwaters that'll be out there. So through the Colonel's actions and through the Governor's engagement, not only with core leadership, but also to the White House, expediting the permit reviews, getting those documents cleared, the Corps has now been able to move forward in putting out a construction bid for this. I believe that came out maybe a month, maybe a few weeks ago. And I'll let them correct the record here, but I believe their goal still is to have some of the first rocks being dropped in July of this year.
No later than, yes.
No later than, all right. But again, I think it's just, again, a testament to when the need is clear, the vision is concise, and the advocacy is unrelenting, we can make good things happen. And I appreciate the Corps' willingness to work through sort of that matrix that the Colonel talked about, the opinion versus the policy versus the law. And I think he found the space working through that. So there is examples of this really working in our favor to get to an outcome here that I think is going to provide that lasting level of protection for the citizens of Grand Isle. Quickly moving on, the Tchefuncte Habitat Restoration, again, another parish matching program here. About $1 million from the Mesa. We support about 1,300 feet of breakwater to get this project done. I think our next slide, yep. Often, nothing too exciting about, just a couple guys signing a piece of paper. But I think this really represents an important milestone in what has been long overdue. While closing New Mexico was important, I do remember those bumper stickers when I was a congressional staffer. Mexico must go. But the next piece to that was the restoration of this community. And it has not moved at the pace it needed to move. I think it may be over 10 to 12 years now. So what you see is Chairman Dove and Colonel Latan signing a design agreement that allows us to start to move forward. Even on something that is 100% federally funded, getting this agreement in place and then having a leading to a PPA at some point. We, the state, are committed to looking at those tier 1 projects. We've got money in our annual plan already. We have to move those out. So even though it's 100% their responsibility, our commitment is we still want to see these things done. We'll continue to put our money up to help move these projects forward. And really, the last piece for us will be figuring out a way to have some type of working time memo with them, so as our investments are being made to something that's truly a federal responsibility, we're getting that credit elsewhere. But despite that, not having it, knowing and thinking we will get it worked out, we are committed. The state is in moving forward. I think this is a further expression of the federal interest as well. I believe there's, I'm thinking about $7 million in current funding in our federal delegation of national security to help support the Corps to move their piece forward as well. So, again, something that is long overdue for a community that needed this restoration to happen. I'm not going to say everyone should be excited that we finally got here, but it's taken way too long. We are committed to moving these projects forward in a timely manner. And then Chandelier Island, again, something that probably is familiar to this commission and to the community in the room today. Exciting to see this project that is under contract now, moving forward with Weeks Marine in some sort of, I'd say, final negotiations on the design and getting the cost in line with the budget we have for it. But really, that commitment we have to our first lines of defense, being able to secure the money through the TIG on this. And again, this was money that it's not often I have a reason to ever thank the state of Mississippi, but as I understand it, they were probably as equally supportive and advocating for the dollars to come to this project as we were. And I think that really shows the importance of region-wide, but let's think beyond the state of Louisiana to something that truly has an impact on our coastal partners over in Mississippi to be able to get a project like this moving forward. I think I was able to go out there with our partners at LDWF within the first 2 or 3 weeks being on the job, and just the fact that I think people probably question whether or not turtles lived out there, what turtles were there, is it even an important breeding ground for them? But to now know that the most rare and endangered species of turtle lives on that island and is thriving on that island and will continue to thrive because of the work we're going to do, I think it's just an incredible story to tell. Looking forward to the groundbreaking, and not to get too far ahead of our outreach and engagement team, but recognizing the connection that this has back to presidents from nearly a generation ago who actually stepped foot on this island. We're going to find, I think we have found, a place that President Roosevelt slept in before he went out to the island. We're lucky enough we might be able to go out to that place to do a ribbon cutting to give or groundbreaking to the project like this. So again, for things that most people won't ever actually see or touch, step on, we're going to figure out a way to make it personal and to really express that value to our state and to the state of Mississippi and how important it is to get this done. And then Lake Bourne, marstration, again, largest marstration project in our agency's history, a little over 3,000 acres. You see us cutting the ribbon there on probably one of the coldest days we probably could have picked. It was absolutely miserable out there. It was frozen for quite a while. But I think the takeaway on something like this is that while it's great to have this ribbon cutting in December of last year, we cannot forget that it took 3 years to build. There were multiple years of planning and design before that, and I'm sure even another year or so of contemplating this project and figuring out how to get it slated for funding. So I may be the recipient of it, the beneficiary of getting to see something at the very end, but it really doesn't capture the full story of the time and energy and length and effort it takes for us to be able to execute projects. And so appreciate our private partners who, I think some of them on the engineering, maybe construction side, lived there so long they became residents of St. Bernard Parish, and they choose their voter registration. They became a part of that community, and I appreciate our partners having that much local connection and that much appreciation for the projects that they're actually going to be. Shouldn't be shocking. We don't own a dredge, so right, if we're going to move mud, we rely on our private partners to do that. But having them truly bought into the local community and having them really be woven into the fabric there was great to hear from the local officials. And again, Barataria Land Bridge, again, another feature that will be talked about in a later presentation. Again, just the continued commitment of bringing restoration as close to the coast. Again, I think river reintroduction, more pop, again, another, this one's probably more highlighted on our portion of it, which is feeding into that mitigation area. But again, cannot stress the partnership we have with the Corps on getting this entire system completed, working through budget challenges and changes. Just a phenomenal partnership with them, and looking forward to this entire system, not only the protection side, but the restoration being delivered in the next several years. We had a chance to go out there and see that project earlier this week as well. Representative Wardron, sorry that you missed us. I heard you may have had your own board meeting then.
Yes, I did.
So I guess that's a reasonable excuse to not join us on the vote.
I jet ski in that area every year, so I'm gonna go take my own tour.
But we had a chance to bring out some of our state representatives to see this, and appreciate everyone who helped support a field trip.
It might, just get one out, I mean, this is where we're able to get all that mitigation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So,
And again, here's more on the hurricane protection side, just again, highlighting the progress being made there. Like, I believe everything is on schedule. And coastwide, let's see if I turn my head here. Yeah, so here's what we've got in engineering and design. Here's what we have in construction in 2025, maintenance and monitoring in 2025, and here's everything together. So I think I'll pause here to say, I really hope everyone continues to appreciate the coastwide reach of our agency, the number of projects that we have that are in all phases of implementation, and the enormous, I think, leverage we have as a relatively small agency with only about 165 people that have the reach and impact we have. It cannot be done without our local partners, cannot be done without our federal partners, and cannot be done without the continued financial support from our state and from our federal education, and quite honestly, the trust being placed in us to receive special funds like the Well Spill and other settlement dollars to be able to execute. So if you want to know what we're working on, what someone in my agency is waking up thinking about, that's it. That's us on a daily basis. And just want to highlight, I hope everyone saw an article in the Times Pick, I believe this is maybe 2 Sundays ago now, that was highlighting the CRIMS network system. I talked a little bit about this at our last board meeting, but it was largest coastal monitoring system in the world today, continued investment from CPRA and QuickRun, but it really is the foundation of how we go through our decision-making process, and appreciate the continued investment and support of the CRIMS network. And then lastly, here on the project side, Barrier Islands, this is really that whole chain that we're looking at. We've got dollars available through NIFWIP to be able to go back out there and look at some of these islands, and obviously Chairman Bell has sort of talked about several of these that we've got in active design right now, and being able to reprogram those dollars to get that front line of defense where we need to be. And looking ahead, Coastal Day, March 30th at the end of the month. Look forward to everyone coming out to help support our advocacy at the state capitol. Coastal Connect will also be that day, an opportunity for us to be able to meet with businesses and share upcoming projects and make sure they're aware of our needs in the very near future. And then I'll turn it over very quickly to Brian on the chapter line and our national planning process.
Appreciate it, Mike. Don't know if I need the microphone. Wife says I don't. Inside, outside, wherever. I use that joke a lot because it's true. She does that every time. So I appreciate being able to do this. We have really 2 things to talk about today, our large planning efforts, and these are really placeholders because we'll be back in front of this commission as these things go on. But a little bit of background and get into some that has to do with our partners, and then really with the coastal master plan and ask from y'all at the end. So first, we are in the middle of an Atchafalaya master plan development. This is something that hasn't really been done in over 30 years. In 2018, CPRA was designated as the new non-federal sponsor for the federal effort in the Atchafalaya, the floodway system. Some great work was done with that, and then sort of stalled out at the federal level on there. No fault of the district, who I can say is very excited to get back in this game, as you heard Colonel Lotan mention. But with that, we still feel it's important to move these things forward. So as the state, sort of outside of that federal program, we've initiated a master plan development. So we wanted to make sure that the Atchafalaya Basin was on equal footing as everything else we do across coastal Louisiana. A lot of folks don't know the coastal area goes all the way up to the old river control structure. So this is still something we're very dedicated towards. Don't want to go through all the bubbles, but I will say a couple of reasons we wanted to do this. First, because things change in 30 years. I don't need to tell anybody that, especially those of us that grew up on the coast. But it's also an incredibly diverse place from habitat standpoint, incredibly diverse from opinions of what that should be on there. And as Chris mentioned earlier, a lot of expectation management on what we can and can't do. So we wanted to make sure we brought all of those folks under one tent to really do that, to say, where can we build consensus? We're going to use science and engineering to do that. We're going to use public input to do that. You can see sort of the big groups that are represented there. But realistically, we are talking to everybody from the individual all the way up to their elected officials participating in this plan. So it was really important to get this full buy-in, but also give the technical treatment that we do with the coastal master plan. So with that, those two things are moving sort of in unison. You'll see this finalized about the same time, a little bit before the coastal 2029 coastal master plan, and really it's our goal to make that as inclusive as we can. I will say there are two big reasons to try to do this. One is to inform other studies. So it was brought up today about the LMR COP program. We didn't want to sit and wait. So now you'll see this from CPRA in general, is a lot of what we do is also in a way that the Corps can then come and take and move forward in there. So we're not just doing it we're doing it for the state's sake, but we're also doing it for a federal interest. And then second is to hopefully get the bumper stickers for this basin that I know the Colonel said it, I've said it for a long time, should be on par with the Chesapeake Bay, should be on par with the Everglades, all of those things that you don't see that level of commitment and really interest for. And I think a lot of that is also on us as the state. The Colonel mentioned to make that case, put that up there federally. So you'll continue to see these things from us as we go, and extremely excited about it. One other thing about the importance, so Michael mentioned he thought it was December in the boat ramp ribbon cutting. It was actually about 4 in the afternoon on the Friday right before the second duck split, and we had a few of those ramps covered with our ribbon cutting. So yeah.
We aggravated a lot of people. I talked quick that day.
They were ready to go to the camp. Everything was iced down. You guys know what I'm talking about, and then they were ready to go. But if you take a ride out there now and see once crawfish season kicked off, there's no question about what the importance of these things and especially access is into the basin. And then second, just a quick update on the larger statewide coastal master plan. So you can see where we are today. This really starts even before we get the last plan approved by the legislature. We're going through the motions on that. I can tell you, you're going to see some exciting new things on this plan. Happy to come back and present as we go along. We're really taking a look on sort of immediate projects to put on the ground, learning a lot, as we always do, from our science and engineering. And as Michael mentioned, the CRIMS program is a big driver on how we do these things. But we're really taking a strong look on how we actively implement projects in the real world and make sure that this plan is reflective of that so we can get an implementable plan. We've already gone out with the first public solicitation for projects. We do this to where anybody can present a project to CPRA. We're about 200, I think we got on the first go around. We'll be going out again later this summer, and we're doing something a little different this time. So normally we'd have 2 of these solicitations then we go into modeling and we go away for a while and come back and talk to the folks. This time, what we're gonna do is, before the second solicitation, we are gonna put out what the 29 plan is seeing as a future without action. So what if we don't do any more than what we have on the books right now, so that folks can make informed decisions about what things they come back to us to do that. And I will say that's it's a big lift for the team, but I think it's an important thing for the residents of Louisiana, so we can give them as much information as possible. So that's my ask to all of you. A lot of you serve on our various committees and technical groups, and we appreciate that. But also, as we get forward, to be able to publicize these things, to be able to carry that message, to make sure we get that out. We're gonna give adequate time for the public to see these items before we do that solicitation, and then we'll work with all the groups to do that. So that's the ask I have today, and I appreciate that. Like I said, I know most of you have been, avid supporters and actively do that every day, and we appreciate that. So again, we'll be with you probably fairly often as we get into updates on the coastal master plan.
And just I'll end here. I think this is maybe the last slide. We will be going forward with our next board meeting, presenting the final annual plan to our board and then transmitting that to the state legislature. And just a quick smattering of projects that we're expected to go into construction this year. Again, totaling, I think that's up $338 million over there as well. We'll leave upcoming bids, again, looking to do better forecasting on our end as well. Projects that are in that kind of $329 million range. And I believe that's it. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I go back. Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Chair, so I just wanted to say I'm really impressed with all of the progress and the work that's included in that presentation. Specifically, want to call out the Chapel I work, including on that master plan. And I'm so grateful that CORE has been a partner in terms of developing the way we develop information is consistent, easy, and for the lower the city comprehensive built on that will quickly turn on and the last thing I want to say is I'm really excited about maintenance and speed to the system. I think that has been such an investment over time, and it gives so much valuable information. So I'm really pleased to see that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, I'd like to also thank you for getting us more focused on the spend 40/30.
Yes, sir.
You pulled that off. I appreciate it. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Moving on. Mr. Mitch Moran, the Delta Coast, Ben Marlboro, GIS, and Henry Packard, with Roy. Presentation on the land.
Mr. Chairman, we have put two different presentations. I'm going to queue them up and do back there first and turn on second.
That's okay. That's great.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ruth. I haven't written that.
Rudy Summerall, Chief Engineer, Mr. Chairman, and member of the commission. The word infrastructure has been used a lot today, and I'm not sure if what we're designing is considered infrastructure. I personally think it is, but what we're doing is designing and building projects that serve as a critical buffer. We have a core here, we have TLCD here, so some of the most major investments of technical in the country. So we're going to lay out these projects for you guys today. We have a easement on the Barataria Basin. We've engaged a private firm, Raw Engineers, who's going to do all the heavy lifting there and present you their status. Then we have a basin between Terrebonne and Lafourche that GIS is going to present on as well. Both of the firms we have engaged are very familiar with this work. They've done a lot of work for the agency and others in the past. What's critical there is that Executive Director Harris talked a lot about many projects that we've done. We want to strive to deliver these projects as efficiently and as quickly as possible. So we're going to look at everything we've done in the past. Every time we take 2 steps back, we want to correct that on these projects. And we commit to making sure we keep these things on schedule. They're important. You guys see the weather loss in both of these areas. You see the progress on the flood protection systems. we need these projects in place to make sure that they synchronize and work and change it with assessment. So with that, we'll turn it over to Andrew Packard. He's the project manager for Royal for the Land Bridge project in the Barataria Basin. He's going to take you through laying out the project and our next steps, and then we'll bring Mitch tomorrow morning at GIS, Ben Morbar up here, and talk about the terminals project. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rudy, and thank you, everybody, for being here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you and introduce to you the Barataria Land Bridge Restoration Program. We're really excited about this. This is something our team of scientists and engineers have been working really hard on. So as Rudy mentioned, this, and also Mr. Hare had mentioned, this program is, the conceptual basis of this program started in the master plan projects for the Lower Barataria Land Bridge, east and west. And with that idea, we aim to kind of deliver the conceptual ideas. For those of you who are not familiar with what a land bridge is, it is a specific project type outlined in the Coastal Master Plan. Generally speaking, if there's open water, let's say a bay or lake on one side, then there will be a marsh feature with providing protection to the other side. These projects are linear in nature and usually span across the basin. Typically, we'll see marsh creation, ridge restoration, and also shoreline protection in these projects, with the ridge usually on the open water facing side at a higher level elevation and marsh creation at a lower elevation. This program is a program, not a project, so the end result of our program work will be a series of projects that span across the Barataria Basin from east to west, and will be delivered sequentially. The program benefits Lafourche Parish, Jefferson Parish, and Plaquemines Parish. The goals are to restore and create marsh, reduce wave erosion, and attenuate storm surge. The projects will be built with both Mississippi River borrow and local borrow sources as appropriate and as the science and engineering dictate. And will likely include shoreline stabilization and living shoreline features. As I said, these Lower Barataria Land Bridge East and West projects from the master plan are the kind of conceptual basis for it. And our goal is to really fine tune those alignments, allowing science, engineering, costs, and schedules to kind of inform the decisions. Just to talk a little bit about our process, the first step is obviously defining the program boundary, the area in which we're going to study and analyze. We tried to make this as large as possible, which we'll talk about later. Second piece was recognizing the urgency of this project and identifying a project that can get started in construction by 2027. From there, we're developing a suite of different potential alignments that can go east to west across the basin. And then from there, using benefits modeling to screen the alignments to potentially eliminate any alignments with deal breakers or constraints that are insurmountable. From that stage, we'll do a data collection phase where we collect survey, geotech, and everything else we need to support an alternatives analysis. From there, taking the remaining potential alignments, performing a detailed alternatives analysis with the goal of landing on a final alignment. And then taking that final alignment and establishing a sequence for both funding, design, engineering, and construction. So then design, engineering, and a phase construction. And I'd say this whole process is kind of developed to allow the science and the engineering to dictate exactly where that alignment lands. As I said, the early step is to identify a near-term implementation project. We've already completed this There is a remaining component in the Bayou DuPont Sediment Delivery Project, BA 039. This was previously funded by the DIG, and it checks, most of our boxes. It provides a near-term direct land creation. It uses renewable river sediment, and there are demonstrated benefits and stakeholder and agency support. We see this project as kind of a piece of the comprehensive strategy for the overall basin itself. So in defining the boundary, like I said, we really wanted to make it as large as possible to start. A big piece that Rudy and his team at CPRA impressed upon us at the kickoff meeting and continuing throughout the process is to leverage existing work in the area, whether it's completed construction projects, engineering, design, survey, geotechnical data, whatever it is, kind of compiling every piece of information we have about that basin to allow, again, the science and engineering to dictate our decision-making process. The boundary also needed to include the two conceptual alignments in the master plan shown here in green, and I think on our side, our scientists kind of had to draw a line resembling close enough to the master plan alignment originally, and also what is kind of feasible to construct in terms of east to west alignment spanning the entire basin. So, as I just mentioned, a big piece of this and a big part of what CPRA communicated to us from the get-go is that we need to find synergies with the existing projects within the area. So this right here shows existing projects that have been completed, in construction, in E&D, and also projects in planning. And so taking a look at all of this information there, but not just the location of the projects themselves, but all the surveying work and geotechnical work that has been done contributing to this, as well as permitting work. Kind of analyzing all that information and saying how can we leverage all of that work already taking place, combining with science and engineering in terms of all the other factors that we have to deal with to identify and pinpoint exactly what is the best route or alignment east to west across that basin. So our scientists and engineering are looking at a slew of different factors that all contribute to identifying where that alignment should be. We have the benefits portion of it, which our hydrologic models are informing what gives us the most land area change, but also then what are the constraints. The governor talked today about land rights and coming up with that deal time ago, and it was a big deal for us because when we were looking at that map and talking about where we could draw an alignment across that basin, it was a challenge, knowing who was potentially friendly, who's not. So solving that is a big deal. Oyster leases, species, permitting, all those things on the constraint side. At the same time, we're trying to maximize the benefit side. And then lastly, there's cost. So looking at the borrow sources, looking at schedule, it's all, we're kind of pulling together all of these factors and determining the best methodology to evaluate where to place that alignment. Before I wrap it up and open to questions, I kind of want to summarize where we are. This is a land bridge program, not a singular project, so it'll be a series of projects across the basin. Right now, we're in phase 3 of our process, which was we're starting to create that suite of alignments. So we're figuring out, maybe 5 to 6 alignments to study further across the basin. And from there, we'll go into the modeling to maybe knock that down to 3 alignments that then we proceed with. And our goals are first and foremost to leverage everything that's been done in the area, and then really open it up and look at science and engineering, as well as cost and schedule constraints dictate where we want. That's all I got. Thank you guys. Take any questions?
Thank you very much. Oh, sure, Mr. Sorry.
for this program on all these different projects, there'll be hydrologic modeling and EIS associated with it as well.
Yes, absolutely. We're working with CPRA, planning this out.
All right, and it's gonna be looking into like Davis Pond flow rates and other smaller diversions that might be added into the basin, delivering sediment in there, how that reacts with the area where we put these planned bridges.
It's a challenge to kind of decide which projects we're gonna model inclusive with
Included or
that.
not.
Right, so I think in the initial stages of 3D modeling, I think the answer is no, unless it has a very significant material impact to how the modeling will perform. But then I think as we screen down and we get into maybe 2 to 3 alignments that we are analyzing, then I think we'll be much more strategic in what we decide to model.
Gotcha. And if I understood the presentation properly, the sediment source from the river is going to be kind of what's going to make the backbone of the land bridge whenever, if you're in an area where you have suboptimal soils.
I don't think that's been fully determined, but I'd say, our engineers will do what's appropriate, and we do imagine that there will be a combination of both, rivers, sediment, and local water.
You do reach a point where river sediment is cost prohibitive or for an unnecessary increase in your cost. So we will analyze that based on cost and availability of sediment in the river. Because there's not as much sediment as we possibly think there is that is readily available.
Gotcha. All right, thank you very much.
That was my question, is what you just said. Oil material. Just kind of mentioned it.
Yeah.
It's a low river for a long time.
And obviously that we'll focus on a lot of the anchorage areas,
Yeah.
like kids and constant coordination with you guys will be a priority as we continue to roll out there.
Where else?
Bays, bayous, leading the Gulf of Mexico, depending on how far south we go.
Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you.
One more, then all.
Here, I'm gonna just introduce them, in case you don't know.
Hold our hand, and let them know what I'll say.
Bruce.
Even CPRA always has to keep helping these local.
That's quite the opposite, quite the opposite. So, as Chairman mentioned, we have Doug Coastal Consultants, Mr. Marwan, representing the program manager. This is also a program, right? This is many different projects that will be strategically approached. And our design lead on this space is GIS engineering. So I'll turn it over to these guys and we'll go from there.
All right, I'll start off, I'll just get Ben set up so that he can drive and all. As we're just talking, the river's not an option for us as we get this far away because of cost. So, just kind of, that was interesting comment, I was thinking about that, but, this side's a little different, and what we're talking about here is from basically the Jefferson-Lafourche Parish line through Terrebonne, and looking, north of 50 miles, of the system here. And that brings in 2 different jurisdictions, which is the South Lafourche Levee District and the Terrebonne Levee District, who have restoration powers in those areas. So CPRA has tasked those 2 entities with delivering this project. And so we have initiated intergovernmental agreements with both South Lafourche Levee District and Terrebonne Levee Conservation District, which they have hired me to be program manager. For those of you who don't know me, I've spent pretty much my entire professional life delivering Morganza to the Gulf for the Terrebonne Levee District. And I guess since we're about 60% done with the lot complex, they figured they'd stick me on something else. And so that's basically where we are. And so what I'll do is, I've assisted in implementing about $1 billion worth of work on Morganza and so forth. So permitting, planning, all of the mitigation associated with Morganza. So, I guess it's kind of in the wheelhouse. We're starting with the master plan
but we're starting with, a region that there is some data on some projects that were captured in this area, but really virgin as we get into Western Terrebonne, in some of those areas. So it's a unique situation where we're really starting from scratch, but it's exciting. I grew up my entire life in the marshes of Terrebonne Parish, and some evenings because my dad was not a very good boat driver, so we slept in the boat. But so it's just a really exciting time to be able to work on something of this magnitude and deliver this for our region and our state. So can we go to the next one? What we do? Yeah, you better take care of that. So I'm just gonna, we started with the master plan here, and this is pretty much the whole basin laid out to get a point of reference to determine alternate alignments here for what we want to look at. What we decided to do was to do some aerial flights of a big buffer zone from basically the Lafourche Ridge all the way to Western Terrebonne. And we really encompassed about a 12,000 foot swath at very high resolution aerials. And then that really has given us a good idea of where to start in terms of coming up with alternate alignments here. I'd like to point out, one thing as a result of the governor's deal with Conoco, one of the projects that obviously going to be tied into this is the Bayou Terrebonne Marsh Restoration and Ridge project. And that's really the first project in this land bridge, I know we're at a level of design, we'll probably have some things to refine, but that's a project that can get under construction in a relatively short period of time. So, you'll start seeing things in terms of that. And as with Royal presented, we're also determining, and part of our deliverables you'll hear about from Ben is we're determining something that is a near-term project that we can deliver. And so we'll get more into that as well. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ben now to get into the details of what's been going on as far as data analysis and doing the gap analysis that we've done so far.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. My name is Ben Mulbrew with GIS Engineering. As Mitch said, we're working on the stretch of land bridge from Western Terrebonne into Lafourche Parish and over to the Jefferson Parish line. I want to acknowledge some of our project team members that have been doing all of the lifting to date. Travis Byron is our project manager. Kevin DeZorn is one of our engineers is here. And Amelie Lagarde and Marianne Alvarez are behind me. They are the brains of this operation. They're smarter and much prettier than me. I'm not sure why I got picked to give this presentation, but I appreciate y'all's confidence, so I'll give it my best shot. So, as Mitch said, a lot of these slides are going to look very similar to what was just presented on the east side of Bayou Lafourche. The focus area for us to date has really been on this Eastern Terrebonne Restoration Project at the request of our clients and partners. We were asked to consider this Western Terrebonne Restoration portion for future phases. So if you see this map, you'll know where that western flank came from. But the focus of this presentation to kind of give you a snapshot of where we are and kind of where we're heading is really from just south of Blue Lac east over to so as Mitch said, we started with the master plan projects. This is a snapshot of those projects that were included in the 23 master plan. These are only the marsh creation and land bridge projects. There's obviously some bridge restoration projects through here that we did not include on this rendering, but wanted to show that this was not this is built on years and even decades of science and analysis. This is not something that Mitch and I came up with while stuck in the marsh in his boat. Just to kind of give you an idea of where that 10 to 12,000 foot swath overlays to these projects. This is what we're looking at. A little bit different than on the east side of Bayou Lafourche. They have some projects that are further north in the basin that are much further along. These are all the projects that are located in the master plan immediately south of the flood protection system. So our focus area is a little more narrow. I'm not going to sit here and tell you at this point that the land bridge is absolutely going to fall within this line. But we wanted to focus on an area to get started. We understand the urgency to get this moving forward and getting some of these projects implemented. There's been a lot of work done in this area in addition to the master plan, which I'll kind of get into. And so for the basis of this is where our study area has been to date. Here it is, 50,000 acres, approximately 10 to 12,000 foot wide along a 40-mile path from Bayou Lafourche to just to the west side of Coconut. Obviously in Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes. And in order to maintain or try to meet the expectation level of our clients, the levee district and CPRA, we divided it into sub-basins, 3 sub-basins, so that we can deploy resources to begin looking at all those basins simultaneously. And obviously throughout the process, we're going to look, just as Royal presented earlier, at several restoration methods: marsh creation, marsh nourishment, ridge creation with restoration, and then obviously where warranted and needed, some shoreline protection features as well. So this was our scope of work. Contract started in December, so not very long ago. Obviously the data gap analysis on an effort like this is quite cumbersome. As Rudy alluded to in the beginning, and Mitch as well, there's been a tremendous amount of work, study, reports, projects, all kinds of work in this study area, dating back decades, that we were fiercely trying to compile all the data to see what was useful, so that we could then begin to start formulating some form of a plan to implement this project. That data gap analysis was completed at the end of February. So that's done and submitted, and we're immediately moving into the next phase, which is the survey and field work. Obviously, not very tight survey transects, but just to give us an idea and allow us to truth up some of the previous reports and data that we're seeing come out of that. Unfortunately, this area is very, very popular in the duck hunting space. So there were some delays in being able to get out there during the duck season and limitations for the timing. And of course, weather constraints at this time of year is not the best time to do surveying. So it kind of fell in time. It kind of fell into place nice for us that right at the date, as the data gap analysis was finishing up at the end of December, so was duck season and other things. So we're now already initiating some of the surveys and field work. We have in our scope geotechnical data collection as needed. None of that has been initiated yet, but we're hopeful as we move closer to our near-term implementation phase that we'll start deploying those resources as well. And then, of course, we're moving to the conceptual alternative development and screening, and then a feasibility assessment and selected alternatives. We're expecting sometime in the summer to be able to come back and give obviously a much more detailed report on our findings and our work. And we're hopeful that, by the end of this year, we can have our near-term project identified and really moving forward. So this is a portion of our data gap analysis. This was a design constraints map that we put together that kind of highlights some data from Sonorous showing water wells, oil and gas wells, some pipeline activity. Obviously, oyster leases is going to be an issue in this area. And quite honestly, this presentation was done before we knew of the first announcement today. So on here, as a design constraint, was labeled LL&E property. So as you all heard from the governor, we can take that title off. We can take that hatching off. So we're really excited about that. But these were some things that kind of drove the decision as to where we're really going to focus our first early implementation project. And not to be a spoiler alert, but we're looking really in this Cornishank de Jean Charles area here, building on a previous project that was taken pretty far along that we think we can pick up and tidy up and move forward. An old project, correct. So, as I said earlier, there was a lot of work done in this area. This is a lot of advantageous data that's available to us. These are projects that have been identified and brought far enough along to get a CPRA state identification number. These range from marsh creation projects to land bridge bridges and even freshwater introduction projects that made available some very, very useful data that we're able to use and not have to recreate the wheel in a lot of this stuff so that we can meet some of those really expedited expectations. And also, obviously, a lot of geotechnical data taken in this region that's going to be very, very useful. And obviously, this slide looks very familiar because I think it's almost exactly the one that was the last slide on the previous presentation. But these are going to be the things that we obviously take into consideration as we move forward and develop our alternative analysis. So these are considerations. And I wish I had much more exciting news to report, but I think we, in the short period of time that we've been engaged, we've done a tremendous amount of work, and we're really, really eager to move on into the next phase and start moving on that early implementation project so that we can have a project under construction by the end of next year. So, and with that, I will defer all my questions today.
Yeah, so I mean, considering that we really engaged GIS in December, they've already delivered a data gap analysis report to us. I think that they have been moving at warp speed in terms of this, but as you can see, there's a lot of stuff to do and a long way to go. I think it's interesting looking at that map. Just look how much ConocoPhillips land falls in that 12,000 foot buffer. That's amazing. And then obviously
32%.
A lot of waste releases as well. So we have a lot of work to do, but we're very excited about it and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have one. Rudy, any of you guys, where's the nearest available suitable sediment source for that kind of job? I mean, is it Joel? Is it?
Well, obviously that hasn't been determined yet. I mean, obviously what GIS is tasked with is determining water. So we're too far away probably from the Atchafalaya River, and we know we're too far away from the Mississippi River. We're probably too far away from Ship Show. Okay. So we may have to look at things differently here in terms of implementing this project to do it in a reasonable cost. But I will say this, I've built about 2,000 acres of mitigation from Orleans to the Gulf. And we've utilized the Houma Navigational Canal, interior lakes, for that segment. And, what I can say is pretty much the only marsh that makes it through Hurricane Ida and Hurricane Francine are the mitigation. So, and I know we haven't done enough study on the resiliency of that, but I know CPRA is working on that. Around Little Lake, where it was completely decimated for Hurricane Ida, I mean, the things that CPRA did in Little Lake are the only things that were left out there. And it's really amazing. So I think we need to look at the last 30 years of applied coastal work that's been done and really apply that to what we're doing here to get something affordable out of it. But obviously, we don't have the borrow identified today yet. That's something we're desperately looking at.
Rudy, wouldn't you say that the Lake Vaughan project, over 3,000 acres, is something similar kind of material? Very, very close to that project, right?
Of course, yes. That's a great analog as well. Obviously, when we design bar areas and inland lakes, we want to do it responsibly. So we don't want to create a very deep hole that could cause erosion problems or even water quality problems. But Lake Barnes is a great example of a large amount of sediment that built a large amount of noise from a very close area. So obviously these guys are gonna focus on that. The Gulf of Mexico is an option. I don't think Ship Shoal is an option for two reasons. Primarily, it's great sand, and I don't think we need great sand to build this project. I think we can build these projects with big exceptions. Second of all, you are very far from Ship Shoal, so I just think that does bring an unnecessary cost to it. But the Gulf of Mexico is an option. You're not that far in some of these areas from the Gulf of Mexico, so you wouldn't get into Coventry. But inland lakes and bays, obviously this map is perfect for this conversation because it documents the challenges, and that'll all have to be worked out through the design process. So it's a lot of sediment to build this land bridge. But I do think we have enough lessons learned from past projects to do that. I do think it's multiple sediments and multiple dredging contracts, some of which will be smaller equipment just because of your depth limited. I don't think you're gonna get a 30-inch dredge in the upper parts of Lake Bowery, because Lake Bowery is a potential borrow site for us, right? So that'll all have to be worked out. But great question, and I do think as we move into the next phase of designing both projects, we have to determine that. It also drives costs.
And that's the most important question to ask, really is.
Has a settlement plan for the oyster leases that are in play been decided on yet, or options still being explored?
Until we have alternate alignments selected, and then really you have to think about how you would construct them to see what other effects you would have. We don't even really have an oyster impact of the vehicle. But we do know that it'll be significant.
Not just from the disposal or pumping standpoint, but from the access standpoint. We have to push barges of equipment through here, so that'll all have to be done in synchronization. If we could plan multiple strategic access areas and acquire leases for across multiple projects, then that's a big difference, right? Rather than going project by project, lease by lease. So that'll all have to be worked out as we kind of develop a plan, which is why we're approaching this from a programmatic standpoint.
I have a question, Chairman Holman. Yes. All right. Well, actually, just 2 points, and one of them was about borrow sources. And I know between Fouchon and Grand Isle, the road there is on a ridge that was an old. You drive and you don't realize that right off the Marsh platform, there was a lot of sand there that was used to build 32, 35. So my first question was, anywhere in the Pointe-aux-Chenes, Terrebonne basin that there would be like an old submerged ridge under the platform, or nothing's ever been found?
Well, Ruby might be able to answer this better. I remember, one of the first projects I worked on was restoring Timalaire Island a long time ago. And I don't want to date myself. I'm much younger than what I'm talking about right now. But, we had interior good sand located for that project. So, I'm not going to rule it out. There could be some good sand sources. One thing we've noticed with Morganza and all the borrow that we've dug from Morganza is when we get to about 10 to 15 feet, we're in solid sand. So there could be sand pockets out there, and I would assume there's close to the distributaries. Sure.
Lenses of sand is the cost of it.
But we're just not there yet in terms of the borrow. Yeah.
The second point I wanted to make was about oysters. I got several oyster bills already filed, one of them to reduce the term of the length of the oyster lease system more closely match the master plan. Already heard from the Oyster Task Force that they're going to oppose that, but nonetheless, despite them doing that for 5 generations, fishing oysters, and nothing needs to change. Our coast obviously has changed. Our attack on the coast have changed, and as we continue on our aggressive restoration efforts in 6-year increments of master plan, I think we need to change many other aspects of Louisiana's working coast to be able to be in the same time frame as that, and that's what that bill does. In addition to that, there was some money granted by Representative Zarang back several years ago for wildlife and fisheries to look at feasibility and cost analysis, and that has not yet come to fruition. And I spoke with wildlife and fisheries very recently about
No direct legislation to it, but whatever program they were supposed to design, get back money, come and give an update and we're gonna set a timeline to get that resolved. So hopefully that'll help with some land bridge program in the fall. That's it. Thank you. And I'll speak to these guys. I don't think they're gonna lose as much sleep on the oyster leases, or we're not gonna lose as much sleep on oyster leases as we are about the pipelines as well. Particularly the unowned ones or unidentified ones are the same one, right? There's a lot of it, there's probably more, right? So, that'll be the thing that we're gonna spend a lot of time on finding this infrastructure and make sure we avoid it.
Thank you.
Only
Yes,
comments on that. There's 100 years of private property ownership out here. Those landowners are a good source of information. Those landowners issue mineral leases, those wells, which you'll find on some of this is not always accurate. I do know that these guys have reached out, and they're going to be reaching out to landowners across the coast. Don't rule out private property ownership as being a wonderful source of information where you can cut to the chase quickly and get good answers. And I'm gonna make the assumption, since Mr. Mulgrew has said they've already initiated the field surveying, that has been done on state water bottoms and not trespassing upon any private ownership out there, Conoco or others.
So we have access agreements were already in place with LL&E to do some of the preliminary surveying outside of LL&E. We began initiating contacting the landowners, you being one, or Apache being one. But no, we have not accessed any private land, and we do not have permission yet. Outside of city water bottoms.
Someone asked me just to go ahead and expropriate. Look, I told them that you would be all for anything that they need.
You're 100% correct for CPRA.
I just want to say that if they do access your property, CPRA didn't give permission.
You know, we always talk about this, and you gotta look this up every now and then, because it always changes depending on who you talk to. I just had her look it up again. You said it the last time, we lose a football field every hour. I had heard that, it was every half hour before that. And she just looked it up every 100 minutes, okay? We lose a football field.
That's because CPRA has been doing a good job.
Right. What excites me, I'm pretty simple-minded about this, what excites me about this, it's gonna impact 460,000 acres of marsh. Losing a football field every 100 minutes. And this is gonna impact this tremendously. To refurbish that marsh that's falling apart as the salt water eats it up. This is tremendous, a tremendous project. 94 miles long, and again, I'm simplified about that, 2,000 feet wide. This is tremendous. And so I'm excited. I hope everybody else is. Let's stop what's falling apart. Good stuff.
So great presentation, always good collaboration on dad jokes, also vibes 100. I guess my real question is, looking through the selection criteria and looking at, the maps and presentations, these are massive projects of massive scale that will require an incredible amount of coordination, collaboration, we would love to collaborate on, but also permitting. It will be inordinately complex. The Colonel made it very clear before he left that they still have a process to follow. So my question is, maybe this is for our engineer, but what's the permitting strategy? These are very disparate and different regions separated by different basins, hydrology, you name it. Are you guys how are you going to accelerate basic delivery, right? Because that's the real question. I don't know if you want to take a stab or Rudy, you have.
I was gonna hit you with a dad joke real quick to distract you.
Absolutely.
No, that's a great question, something that we've already talked about, actually both teams together. So everything we're doing here is no different than everything else we've ever permitted. We're not reinventing any wheels in terms of that, it's just on a grander scale. So we're looking at strategies. Can we permit the whole thing together? That's a question we have to look for. Or is it more of a coordination on the whole thing, but permit things when we design them at that time? you know, examples of that could be, can we get consistency on the permit annex at the regulatory? If I got the same person that Ben has to call every time for every little project that builds this land grid, how much time does that save? Right? So we have some strategies. I think we have some communications with the core and even upper levels as to how we may approach this. And to your point, that is one of the things that I think we have to get better on. And we have, over the past decade, we have got better. We're not doing anything new or different here. At the end of the day, whether or not we can move that, I think, with the drive that's been pushed here. We've had some conversations with some of the permanent names. Obviously, when you look at DCD, the state, we're afforded the opportunity for consistency, which speeds that process along. If we can get the core to go into a general programmatic on some of these things, we can get a shorter agency notice rather than full public notice. You know, that those are some things that we can take advantage of to move that needle. But it is a beast. And I do think that is one of the critical things. We hit them all, right? Oysters, oil and gas infrastructure permitting. Us dumb engineers can figure out the rest of them with some bad jokes and some math. But at the end of the day, I think that is something we have to attack as a program.
And I think that's one of the things that when you look at the criteria, screening criteria, time is not there. Cost is also not there. I understand you guys look at everything through the lens of cost, but I would strongly encourage us to think about how you hydrate time and implementation and time. You don't have that commodity in screens.
The one thing I'm excited about is, you know, we are in constant communication with Royal on the other side. They're a few steps ahead of us in terms of this, but we're all approaching it exactly the same way. But I think that we have the right team of people who have dealt with these difficult situations before. So from CPRA and from Rudy's leadership all the way down to the design consultants, I mean, we just got the right group of people working on this, so we're going to figure it out. We just don't come to you with those answers right now.
And I do think there are portions of this that are more permittable and easier to design than others. And we're going to prioritize that in the fall. So that all has to work out in the screening process. But great question, and something that's on our minds.
Thank you. Thank y'all very much. We're released? Yes. Plus, Johnny, I'm gonna stay on the pass and make sure we get this stuff done. Just like you did. All right. Mr. Day, my epoxy.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to speak. I know I'm having a long meeting, so I'll be brief in just a few minutes. Cover what I have to say, and hope I'll use this correctly. So the whole focus of my talk is the title, which is we're at a crucial point right now. We're going to move forward on the Gulf hypoxia problem. And I'm not going to talk about the science or the impacts really, although I'm happy to answer questions about that. But as we all know, it's the loading of the nutrients, nitrogen, and phosphorus out of the Mississippi and Chapalaya mouths, fueled by what you see up in the top left corner, the massive Mississippi River Basin that we are terminus of. And our group, just briefly, we're housed at LSU. We're an open forum. We've been meeting since 2003. The meetings are open to all interested participants in case anybody doesn't have enough meetings to go to. We meet by Zoom, and we welcome everyone. But what I'm going to say today reflects discussions we've had for a long time, but I'm speaking from my own perspective. I've been involved in this issue since 1999, and from 2005 to 2023, I was affiliated with the Hypoxia Task Force. So I'm speaking from that perspective of my experience. So, about that task force, wouldn't it be great to have an agreement with all the states upriver and the federal government and others? Well, we've got that. We've had it since 1998. And there's been an action plan since 2001. And I always like to remind folks that that's a cooperative plan based on voluntary actions. There are no mandates or regulations in it. The components of the plan are consensus agreements from all the participants. and that includes 12 states upriver, federal government, and others. And basically trying to deal with this problem, I think as most of us know, there's two things you can do. You can try to reduce the nutrients that are going into the water, and then you can also try to remove them once they're in the water. The first one is easier than the second. And as I mentioned, this action plan has been through 3 iterations. It was revised in 2008, and then again in 2014 to 15. And this is the one we're operating under now. And it had 2 key components. The first one was trying to achieve a 20% reduction of nitrogen and phosphorus loading to the Gulf from the Mississippi and Chapelina rivers by 2025. Second one is achieving an average annual size of 5,000 square kilometers, which is about 1,950 square miles, of the hypoxic zone. That's an average annual size measured over 5 years. It fluctuates every year, so it certainly takes that into consideration. That goal target size was originally set in 2000 to be achieved by 2015, and it wasn't, but in 2015 that goal timeline was revised. And so now they gave it 20 years, time goes fast, here we are in 2026. So we are in the critical window to achieve the goal for the action plan. And another key point to make is that these timelines are the action plan. 2025, 2035, achieving the earlier 2015, that is the core part of this agreement that was made, the commitments that were made. And the key reason it wasn't achieved in 2015 is that there weren't enough resources, didn't get adequate funding. That's still the main limitation of the effort. So, why did that occur? Well, there's a number of reasons, but during the previous state administration, based on my experience in the process, I have to say that Louisiana was a passive and largely silent member of this task force. And the people we had representing us on the task force, and I say this from having been in most of the meetings and on most of the phone calls, if you're asking what they did to get new funding for the action plan, I would say nothing. What they did to indicate that its goals were a priority for the state, I would give the same answer. And so, the message that we were sending was that this really isn't that important in Louisiana, but to the degree it was important, it was generally as a way to promote the Mid-Barrens area sediment diversion when that was on the table. So again, this is the public record of that process. And there's a basic problem with that, which is that project doesn't exist. The project exists, I guess, in the plan, but the diversion doesn't exist. And the diversion doesn't have any effects on hypoxia, good or bad, until it's operational. And so before that, it doesn't do anything. And I think this partly, maybe to be generous, it reflects confusion about the role of diversions in the hypoxia action plan. So I wanted to try to offer some clarification about those, just from my experience. So diversions have been part of the coastal master plan for a long time, but it turns out that the timelines they were on didn't align with the hypoxia action plan at all. They were talked about. Early on, the assumption was that they would be built fairly quickly. That turns out not to be the case. And I think over the life of the hypoxia action plan, the only new diversion that's come on where they're being located, the design. I mean, just think of the difference between something like the Mid-Barrens area diversion and the Marval diversion. So they're all diversions, and they all have basically the same immediate effect that they're operating, which is on the Mississippi, which is that they do take a portion of the flow with the nutrient load in that, and they take it out of the river. So it doesn't come out the bottom. It doesn't help, at least directly, fuel the hypoxic zone that forms west of the mouth. Now, what happens in the receiving body of water, that's a completely different issue. That really, again, depends on the location, the design, how it's operated, a lot of factors that don't have anything to do with the action plan, as it turns out, by hypoxia. So the action plan is trying to deal with a problem that's driven by nitrogen and phosphorus loading. And it did provide a window, if we can reduce those, as we committed to do with our partners upriver. There's a window there to achieve those lower levels of the river, so that if the diversion does come online, one that can alleviate some of the concerns about that. That window's still there, but after 26 years, we really have not reached the goals that had been set to do it. And so nitrogen and phosphorus, they can fuel hypoxia and harmful algal blooms. And one of them is a low oxygen problem. The other one has to do with toxic algae. Those things can happen even if there's vegetation growing or land being built. There have been a number of studies looking at how Barataria Bay processes nutrients, looking at the impacts of Davis Pond, and looking at the potential impacts of the mid-Barataria diversion. There's a lot of these studies. But basically, that's all a secondary thing. The project has to be in operation. There's a lot of factors that are involved, that we, are still not clear on in some cases. And of course, there's other water quality concerns that don't have anything to do with that. And I just listed two lower Barataria bays impaired by Enterococcus bacteria. Turns out now in Mississippi from Baton Rouge down to Hepatitis is impaired by hexachlorobenzene. These are both from the draft integrated report that Q put out this year. So those have nothing to do with hypoxia, but they are water quality concerns in these bodies of water. So I went through those 5 sets of considerations very quickly just to kind of, set the stage for what I hope that we and the governor can focus on now in the situation we're in. So, as I mentioned, we're in a critical window, but the priority is very simple. We have this plan. We need to focus on getting it the resources that it needs, keeping the ones that it has, the current funding streams, growing those. That's never really been done. And as I mentioned, our state, has not tried to do that in any kind of active way for the entire time that I've been involved. Luckily, we have partners upriver states that have tried to do that. Our delegation's been very supportive, and they have tried repeatedly and successfully on some occasions to do it, and they're ready to do that again. We have to ask them, and we have to join with our partners to try to do that. The first Trump administration was very supportive of the hypoxia action plan. We didn't take advantage of that. And I can mention that during the Biden administration, a lot of federal money was being moved around. We didn't take advantage of that either. But now we're in the second Trump administration, so are we going to take advantage of that this time? That's what I hope the governor will hear. If he were here, I'd certainly make that appeal to him. But we've got these partners. We need to ask them, because there's a lot of things happening. They need to hear that it's a priority. Right now, we're in the middle of congressional appropriations season, and I and other people are working to get some in just to get them on the table. And UMRDA, on their own, has approached congressional committees, and they've approached the White House about making this a line item in the president's budget. That has never been done, and they had never been asked to do that. Now, I don't know how successful they've been so far, but I am to think that if Governor Landry joined with that request, it would have an impact. So this is actually, for a very complex, large issue, but I think the priorities at this point are just very simple. Let's get this action plan more resources, meet that goal, 2035 that's ahead. And when I talk about this, I always have to clarify that saying we didn't meet the goal doesn't mean that nothing was done. A lot of things have been done, a lot of things are being done, but not at the scale needed to reach that goal. So that's where we are, and I hope that that's a message that you all can convey to the governor. Mr. Dove's been very supportive, and so the timing is right to really move the needle on this. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for providing this presentation on the agenda. I just wanted to add, all these actions are voluntary.
Yeah.
So there's no regulatory aspect, but it behooves us, because this is a win-win situation, that we're doing something that will improve fisheries, coastal restoration, for the part of hypoxia. So we'll be implement proposed office every year. Dale has, presented that to legislature, passed the city, have a statewide recognition, and I just want to thank, I think, the Bill, the efforts are appreciated. So thank you.
Chairman Olin. I wanted to make it known that over the years, Representative Zarang has carried the water or he legislatively, and I've agreed that since he's termed out next time, that I'll be the person picking up and doing that. And made a commitment to Dr. Daigle there to his office and get a full deep dive on hypoxia. And I appreciate all that you've done. Now, I do have one question about, you talked about diversions and the, you call it a secondary effect. You know, they were really meant to build land, but the processing of nutrients. So I guess the thing I'd like to hear said is that it's better for those nutrients to be filtrated through the basin rather than being dumped out the river. Is that a fair statement?
Well, it depends, you know, again, if you're taking the load out of the river, then you're reducing what comes out of the mouth. Now, it is better for them to be processed, but you know, what each project does and the impacts on where that happens are really separate questions, and there's a lot that goes into that you know, doesn't have anything to do with this plan. You know, where the project's located, how it's operated. But what is the, you know, factor across all of them is if you don't reduce the nutrient loads of the river, you're putting a higher load into the receiving water body. And we committed to do that, so you know, that's
the depth of where this occurs, the algae blooms and all, or generally what, deeper than 15 feet or?
Again, it depends, you know, but the algal blooms, you know, the conditions where you can have the algal blooms in the receiving basin, you know, are going to depend on depth, like you said, and other things. Those can happen even if you're building land, of course, but you know, they're serious concerns. So, again, you know, I don't want to generalize about all of them, but obviously processing nutrients is helpful. It just depends how it happens, depends on a lot of other things.
Good. Like I said, I'm committed to carrying the torch beyond Representative Zarang's last year, and looking forward to getting with you more, moving forward, getting you more funding and getting the plan done.
Thank you, Mr. All right, Mr. Day, thank you very much. Very informative.
I would like to make a motion. Earlier, we talked about someone on the other end brought up about the minutes not being properly reflected. And I'd like to make a motion if possible. You did say taking under advisement, and in Robert's rules, that basically puts a pin on it.
Yeah.
And I would like to make a motion to direct administration and the archivist to go through the video of our 2025 meeting and give us a better recollection of what was said in that, for that to be reflected. I think it's warmless where we are now moving forward for our commission. I value this commission. You know, I asked you, I wanted to also thank you for doing it. In my mind, having a full calendar year go by without us meeting would be very detrimental. So, number one, I appreciate that. And number two, I'd like to make a motion to direct admin to do some revised minutes for that.
Any discussion? Any objection? All right. What you get?
And thank you. Was it Mr. Cochran that brought it up over there? Okay. I couldn't see or hear.
I'm sorry.
You did say it, taking it under advisement in Robert's rules, that basically puts that as a pin for complex issues to be looked at and decided on later. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any more discussion? Are you ready? Motion adjourned. Goodbye.
I second.
Discussion, any objection?